Su, you lazy dog, still alive? You stole the group's grain, gambled it all away, and left your wife and child in a rundown temple. Are you even human? If you want to tag along with our refugee group, kneel down. Hand your daughter over to work as a servant in my household, and I'll reward you with half a bowl of chaff. At the temple gate, torch flames flickered. Zhao Laosan from the refugee band planted one foot on the threshold, clutching a broken wooden stick in his hand, his face twisted with scorn. Behind him, several displaced people jeered. Half a bowl of chaff is more than he deserves. That girl of his is badly burned. She might not even pull through. Selling her gets him food. That's a good deal for good-for-nothing Chun. On the dirt ground, Chun-Su opened his eyes. Sharp pain shot through his skull. Unfamiliar memories flooded into his mind. 3 years of brutal drought, refugees fleeing across the northern lands. The original man also bore the name Chun-Su, a notorious good-for-nothing among the refugees. He stole grain and beat his wife. The night before, he had abandoned his wife and daughter inside this dilapidated temple, run off with their last bit of food, gambled every crumb away, and gotten beaten half to death before being dragged back here. What a worthless wretch. Chun-Su propped himself up and sat upright. In the corner, Su Wanyang held their child tight in her arms. Her clothes were tattered rags, her lips cracked and dry. When she saw Chun-Su wake, she did not call out to him. Instead, she pressed the little girl tighter against her chest. Zhao Laosan jabbed the wooden stick against Chun-Su's chest. Do you hear me? Kneel. Chun-Su lifted his gaze to meet Zhao Laosan's eyes. Zhao Laosan froze for a split second under that stare, then his expression darkened. You dare glare at me? Crack. The stick lashed across Chun-Su's shoulder. Chun-Su let out a muffled groan, his fingers digging deep into the mud. His body was terribly weak, starved for far too long. Still, he would not bow his head. Zhao Laosan sneered and turned towards Su Wanyang. Sushi, your daughter has decent features. My family needs a young servant girl. Hand the child over. If you agree to come with me too, you won't go hungry. If you stay with Chun-Su, you two will only die out here. Su Wanyang clutched her daughter tighter, her voice hoarse. Get lost. Zhao Laosan's face turned sour with humiliation. You really want to insult me? He lifted his foot to step inside the temple. Chun-Su clamped his hand hard around Zhao Laosan's ankle. Who said you could come in? Silence fell over the temple. Zhao Laosan stared down at Chun-Su as if he had heard a ridiculous joke. What did you just say? I said get out. The other refugees burst into louder laughter. Has Lazy Chun lost his mind? Third brother, break one of his legs. Zhao Laosan raised his stick and swung it straight for Chun-Su's head. Gritting his teeth, Chun-Su summoned every ounce of strength and rolled sharply sideways, barely dodging the blow. He scrabbled for a chunk of broken brick on the ground. As Zhao Laosan's strike missed, and his momentum carried him forward, Chun-Su smashed the brick hard against his shin. Crunch. A dull, heavy sound rang out. Zhao Laosan gasped in agony and stumbled downward. Like a starved wolf, Chun-Su threw himself on top of him. No matter how Zhao Laosan struggled, he pressed the jagged brick firmly against the man's throat. His movements were clumsy, yet brutally forceful. The jeers from the doorway died instantly. Take one more step forward, and I'll end you. Zhao Laosan's Adam's apple bobbed. The sound of him swallowing was unnervingly clear in the quiet temple. Chun-Su, you wouldn't dare hurt me. The refugee group is just out front. If you harm me today, your wife and child won't live to see tomorrow. Chun-Su pressed the brick harder. Its sharp edge tore the skin, and blood trickled down Zhao Laosan's neck. His face drained of all color. Fine, fine, you win. Zhao Laosan scrambled backward on hands and knees, clutching his injured knee, still cursing. Wolves lurk outside this temple. Starving folk wander around after dark, scavenging the dead. The three of you can rot in here. The torchlight receded, curses fading bit by bit until silence returned. Darkness swallowed the temple once more. Wind whistled through cracks in the crumbling walls, snapping the tattered cloth draped over the old Buddha altar. Chun-Su loosened his grip, and the brick clattered onto the dirt. His chest heaved violently. That short fight had drained nearly every last shred of strength from his body. Su Wanyang watched Chun-Su warily. There was no gratitude in her eyes, only deep suspicion. Where's the grain? Chun-Su said nothing. Su Wanyang's lips trembled. Don't pretend. You used to act exactly like this. You'd claim you were going to find food, only to come back and beat me. She glanced down at Xiao Man in her arms. The little girl's face burned bright red, and she mumbled deliriously. Mother, hungry. Su Wanyang tipped the last few drops of water from a chipped bowl, dipped her finger, and dabbed it across the child's parched lips. Chun-Su's chest ached sharply. The original man truly deserved death. But now he inhabited this body, and he would make amends for those past wrongs. He patted down his whole body. He owned nothing but ragged clothing and a frayed hemp rope tied around his waist. He searched the temple thoroughly, finding nothing but dust beneath the altar. A wolf's howl echoed not far outside. Su Wanyang huddled deeper into the corner with her daughter. Xiaoman suddenly convulsed and let out a thin, feeble whimper. "Father!" Chinsu spun around. The little girl's eyes were shut tight, delirious from fever, yet she still called for him. A tight lump formed in Chinsu's throat. He walked over to the old Buddha statue and rested both hands against the worn altar. A cold mechanical voice echoed inside his head. Detected hosts overwhelming will to survive. Location check-in system activated. Current location, abandoned temple. Initiate check-in. Chinsu stiffened. A system? Had starvation driven him hallucinate? The voice repeated. Initiate check-in. Chinsu did not hesitate. Check-in. Check-in successful. Abandoned temple. Reward, steamed wheat bun ×2. Stored in system inventory. A gray grid lit up in his mind's eye. 2 plump, warm steamed buns sat within it, wisps of steam rising off their surfaces. Chinsu's heart hammered. It was real. He did not pull them out right away. On this refugee trail, a single rotten bun could spark deadly bloodshed. A fragrant white steamed bun was worth countless lives. Take the child and move to that inner corner. Su Wanyang stayed where she was. Chinsu glanced back toward her. Wolves haunt the doorway. That corner blocks the wind. If you don't trust me, grab a shard of tile. Hit me with it if I get too close. Su Wanyang gritted her teeth, lifted Xiaoman, and slowly shuffled over. Chinsu crouched beside them, shielding them from view of the doorway. With a thought, one steamed bun materialized in his palm. White, soft, warm to the touch. Su Wanyang's eyes widened, her mouth falling open. Where did you get this? Chinsu tore off a small piece and ate it. It is not poisoned. He held another tiny fragment to the sick little girl's lips. Delirious with fever, Xiaoman caught the scent of wheat and instinctively opened her mouth. The moment the soft bread touched her tongue, tears streamed down her cheeks. Mother, it's soft. Su Wanyang's hands shook violently as her gaze stayed fixed on Chinsu. Chinsu placed half the bun onto her lap. Eat. You cannot protect the child if you starve. Su Wanyang bowed her head and took one tiny bite. She clapped a hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Chinsu looked away. He dared not watch, lest rage overwhelm him. Nothing could be heard except wind howling through the broken walls. Chinsu returned the second bun to his inventory, saving it to split between Su Wanyang and the girl later. Though she had eaten a few bites, Xiaoman still ran a high fever. Bread alone was not enough. She needed medicine. Barely sustaining himself, Chinsu leaned against the cold stone base of the Buddha statue. He dared not sleep, planning how to find fever-reducing herbs at dawn. His back pressed against the cool stone, and he had barely closed his eyes. Detected new location, shadow behind Buddha statue. Initiate check-in? Chinsu's eyes flew open. Could he check in again? He wasted no time. Check-in. Check-in successful, shadow behind Buddha statue. Reward, fever relief medicine packet ×1. Stored in system inventory. Fever medicine. Another item appeared in his inventory, a small paper packet printed with modern characters. Exactly what Xiaoman needed right now. Crouching behind the statue, Chinsu held his breath, sorting out the rules of this system. The main hall counted as one spot. The space behind the Buddha counted as another. He glanced upward toward the temple's sturdy, though damaged, roof beams. His body was terribly weakened. His hands trembled as he gripped the thorn-covered wooden pillar and began to climb. He slipped several times. Rough wood scraped his legs, drawing blood mixed with dust. He bit back every sound and slowly hauled himself onto the beam. As soon as he sat steady, detected new location, temple roof beam. Initiate check-in? Chinsu cracked a grim smile. Check-in. Check-in successful, temple roof beam. Reward, dried meat, half a gene. Stored in system inventory. Half a gene of dried meat. He panted atop the beam, realizing how loosely the system judged locations. Before the Buddha, behind the Buddha, high on the beam, all separate check-in points. What other spots would qualify? He climbed back down. His legs buckled, and he nearly fell. Leaning on the altar, he gasped for air. Detected new location, altar hidden compartment. Initiate check-in? Chinsu's eyes went wide. Check-in. Check-in successful, altar hidden compartment. Reward, thick coarse cloth, quilt ×1. Stored in system inventory. A quilt. The night wind bit cruelly, and the sick child needed warmth desperately. He crawled out from under the altar and spotted the half-broken earth god statue in the corner. He knelt before it and waited 2 breaths. No prompt appeared. Not every spot worked. He walked toward the temple entrance. Detected new location, temple threshold. Initiate check-in? Check-in. Check-in successful, temple threshold. Reward, Tinder stick ×1. Stored in system inventory. 5 check-ins inside one single temple. He had earned steamed buns, fever medicine, dried meat, a quilt, and tinder. Every single item was desperately needed. Standing on the threshold, Chun-Su listened to the wind carry distant wolf howls. Fear held no sway over him now. Excitement surged instead. He wondered how many nooks and crannies this temple held. Would individual bricks count? Was the Buddha's left side a separate spot from its right? Would the top and bottom of the broken window each trigger a check-in? His hands trembled, not from fright, but from elation. This was no ordinary check-in system. It was a massive bug. He walked back to Su Wanyang and knelt beside her, his knees thudding against hard dirt. His body grew numb, pain fading, kept upright only by sheer will. He pulled the fever relief medicine packet out of inventory. Instructions were printed on the wrapper. Half a packet for adults, 1/4 for young children. He poured 1/4 of the bitter white powder into the tiny amount of water left in the broken bowl and stirred it. The rest of the packet he tucked safely inside his clothing. Don't give her that. Su Wanyang seized Chun-Su's wrist, her bony fingers digging into his skin, her gaze fierce. What is that substance? Medicine to bring down her fever. Where did you get such medicine? Su Wanyang's voice shook. Chun-Su, if you poison my child, I will fight you to the death. Without arguing, Chun-Su lifted the bowl and drank a small sip. Bitter taste burned his tongue. He wiped his lips and held the bowl out again. I drank it. If it is poison, I will die first. Su Wanyang stared at his face for several heartbeats, then glanced at her fever-stricken daughter. Her fingers slowly loosened. Chun-Su carefully fed the bitter liquid to Xiaoman. The little girl's face scrunched in distress, yet she swallowed it down. Next, he pulled out the coarse cloth quilt and draped it over Su Wanyang and the child. Su Wanyang froze, her fingers brushing the dry, thick cotton fabric. It smelled of cotton stuffing. She opened her mouth, but said nothing. Chun-Su took the tinder stick, gathered dry twigs and straw in a sheltered corner, and lit a small fire. Orange flames flickered against the walls, bringing a hint of warmth to the rundown temple. Wrapped in the quilt with her daughter, Su Wanyang watched Chun-Su's profile for a long time. You are not the real Chun-Su. Chun-Su's movements paused. He tossed another broken branch onto the fire, his expression calm. I am. The old Chun-Su would never treat us like this. I will not be that man anymore. Su Wanyang fell silent. After taking medicine and eating a few bites of bun, Xiaoman's breathing steadied, and the dangerous flush faded from her cheeks. Chun-Su sat against the wall, tore off a thin strip of dried meat, and held it out to Su Wanyang. She accepted it and clutched it in her palm. Are wolves truly outside? Yes, Chun-Su answered, gazing toward the pitch-black doorway. But they cannot get in. The entrance is narrow. I can block it. Su Wanyang said nothing. As the fire burned on, Chun-Su reached out and touched Xiaoman's forehead. Her fever had clearly eased. The medicine was working. Relieved, he sat cross-legged and opened the mental system interface. His inventory had 10 grid slots arranged in 2 rows. 2 slots were currently lit. Steamed wheat bun ×1, dried meat, half a gene. Chun-Su opened his eyes, picked up a small pebble from the ground. He wondered whether the inventory could hold any object or only check-in rewards. He focused his will, trying to store the pebble. Nothing happened. The pebble remained in his hand. The inventory grids stayed unchanged, so it could only hold items obtained from check-ins. He pulled the steamed bun out again. It was still warm. He stared out at the noisy wind, then mentally returned the bun to inventory. A soft chime sounded. The grid lit once more, the bun safely stored. As he prepared to close the interface, his eyes locked onto the number in the corner of the bun's grid. His pupils shrank. Steamed wheat bun ×2. Only 1 bun had been placed back, yet the system displayed 2. Chun-Su pulled out the partially used medicine packet from his chest. It was noticeably thinner, 1/4 of its contents gone. He stored it in the inventory, then retrieved it again. The packet was full once more, restored to its original state. Chun-Su clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms. Pain grounded him, keeping his overwhelming joy in check. The inventory was far more than simple storage. It could restore items to their original check-in condition. Eat 1 bun, return the other, and 2 reappeared. Use 1/4 of medicinal powder, store it away, and the packet became full again. Unlimited food, unlimited medicine. As long as the item existed in the inventory, it would never run out. For now, his priority was restoring his strength. Only with strength could he seek more check-in locations. He retrieved dried meat and 1 steamed bun from inventory, tore off a small portion for himself, and returned the rest. Starvation had wrecked his body. Gorging would kill him. He chewed every mouthful thoroughly before swallowing. The salty savor of dried meat and soft warmth of wheat filled his empty stomach. Su Wanyang observed him from beneath the quilt, confused. The old Chunsu would wolf down food greedily, never chewing slowly like this. Chunsu ignored her gaze. Once he finished eating, some of his strength returned, and his knees no longer wobbled. He checked Xiaoman's forehead again. Her fever kept subsiding, and her breathing stayed even. Is there more medicine? Su Wanyang whispered. There is medicine left, Chunsu replied, but our water is nearly gone. Only a thin layer of water remained in the broken bowl, barely enough to moisten lips. During this multi-year drought, parched wells and dried up rivers meant people died of thirst more often than hunger. Chunsu glanced toward the temple's rear courtyard. Fragments of the original man's memories told of an old dried up well out back. If he could trigger a check in there, he might obtain water. Stay here and guard the child. Do not move. I am going to check the backyard. He took the tinder stick, gripped a chunk of brick, and ducked through the side passage beside the Buddha into the rear yard. Moonlight streamed through gaps in the crumbled outer wall, illuminating desolation. Weeds lay withered and yellow across the ground. Broken tiles littered everywhere. In the yard stood an old chopping stump beside rotting timber. A few steps further loomed the dark mouth of the dried up well, cold earth, scented wind billowing upward from its depths. Chunsu stepped next to the chopping stump. Detected new location, backyard chopping stump. Initiate check-in, check-in, check-in successful, backyard chopping stump. Reward, wood cutting machete ×1. Stored in system inventory. He pulled the machete out. A sharp iron blade fitted onto a wooden handle, its edge gleaming coldly. He tucked it into his hemp waist rope. The weight of the weapon gave him a sense of security. Eyes drift toward the dry well. Chunsu takes a deep breath and walks over. The moment his foot lands on the stone edge of the well. New location detected, dry well rim sign in. A smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. Sign in. Successful at dry well rim reward. Water pouch ×1 stored in system backpack water. Chunsu takes out the water pouch. It is stitched cowhide, full and plump. He pulls out the wooden stopper, and clear water sloshes gently inside. He only takes a tiny sip. Sweetness flows down his throat. Refreshing. Chunsu plugs the stopper back and puts the pouch away into the system backpack. He props both hands on the well rim and leans forward to look down. The dry well is not deep. Moonlight illuminates the cracked mud at the bottom. Several protruding bricks line the well wall, barely usable as footholds. Grinning his teeth, Chunsu climbs down into the well. His feet land on gravel at the well bottom. Above him hangs a full round moon. New location detected, dry well bottom sign in. Successful at dry well bottom reward. Coarse pottery jar ×1 stored in system backpack. Chunsu laughs upward, his laughter echoing off the well walls. He climbs back up by gripping the brick crevices. His fingertips burn with pain. Once he pulls himself over the wellhead, he collapses onto the ground, gasping for breath, palms resting on the bluestone ground beside the well. New location detected, bluestone beside the well sign in. Successful at bluestone beside the well reward. Roll of hemp rope ×1 stored in system backpack. Chunsu lies on the ground, catching his breath. His face is covered in dust, yet his eyes burn bright. 1 dry well, 3 locations, 3 supplies. He glances over the rest of the backyard. Walking to the broken section of the courtyard wall triggers no prompt. Standing beside rotting timber for 2 breaths brings no notification. There are no more sign in spots in the backyard. That will have to do. Howl. The wolf howl draws much closer. Night wind carries a faint, foul stench. Chunsu hurries back into the front hall. Back inside the temple, he takes out all the signed in supplies and lays them on the ground. A wood cutting knife, water pouch, coarse pottery jar, and hemp rope. Grabbing the hemp rope, Chunsu squats by the temple gate. He ties one end to the base of the left door stone pillar, runs it flat across the threshold, loops the other end twice around the right door pillar, and ties a tight knot. A trip rope. Wolves have short legs. Charging in, they will trip immediately. Humans would too. 2 steps behind the rope, he scatters broken bricks sharp, side up across the ground. Chunsu claps dust off his hands and stares at the trip, rope, and jagged bricks. These are no sophisticated traps, but in the pitch, black ruined temple entrance, they can cripple any intruder. Suwon, Nyang has not slept. Her eyes glint in the firelight, fixed steadily on Chunsu as if observing a complete stranger. Chunsu returns to the fire. He takes out the pottery jar, pours most of the water from the pouch into it, and sets it over the flames to boil. When the water bubbles and roils, he breaks half a steamed bun, crumbles it, and sprinkles the crumbs bit by bit into the boiling water. He stirs back and forth with a scavenged wooden stick. White paste simmers inside the jar, and the aroma of steamed grain fills the air. Su-wan. Nyang sniffs, then quickly drops her gaze, pretending to check whether Xiao Man has kicked off her quilt. Chun-Su stirs the thin porridge smooth, scoops a small bowlful, and sets it aside to cool, then holds it out. Eat, both of you. Go slow. Eating too much after going hungry for long will upset your stomach. Su-wan. Nyang takes the bowl. Her fingers brush against his, and she flinches away. She lowers her head, lifts a little porridge on the tip of a stick, blows it cool, and holds it to Xiao Man's lips. The little girl drowsily opens her mouth to eat. She smacks her lips, and her brows relax. Su-wan. Nyang keeps her head down, showing little expression. Once the child is fed, she pushes the bowl back toward Chun-Su. You should eat some too. Her voice is soft. Chun-Su blinks and pushes the bowl back to her. I've already eaten. Finish what is left. Su-wan. Nyang does not argue. She bows her head and drinks every drop of the porridge. When finished, she wipes her mouth with the back of her hand and pulls Xiao Man tight against her chest. A log pops in the fire, sending sparks flying. Su-wan. Nyang glances at Chun-Su, then looks down again. Thank you. Chun-Su does not turn around, adding more firewood to the flames. Sleep. I will keep watch through the second half of the night. Logs crackle in the fire, and warmth fills the run-down temple. Chun-Su leans against the wall and closes his eyes. Barely half an incense stick of time passes. Heavy panting suddenly sounds outside the temple gate. Rough, rapid, mixed with low whimpers. Scrape. Scrape. Sharp claws scrape against the broken threshold. Heavy, labored breathing echoes outside, growing clearer by the second. A thick, rank stench drifts through gaps in the broken door and seeps into the temple. Chun-Su jumps to his feet. Dancing firelight stretches his shadow long across the walls. He stares hard at the rickety temple gate. Out in the darkness beyond the crack glow pairs of eerie green eyes. Then a second pair. A third pair. More than one wolf is out there, a whole pack. Bang! One wolf slams hard against the left door panel. Wood chips shower down, and the door hinge creaks under strain. Scrabbling noises ring out by the wall base as claws rake harshly against blue bricks. Low wolf howls rise and fall outside. In the corner, Su-wan. Nyang turns deathly pale and trembles all over. She clutches Xiao Man tightly and presses a hand over her daughter's mouth to muffle any sound. Chun-Su glances back, his gaze sharp, and his voice drops to a harsh whisper. Hide behind the Buddha statue. Press flat against the wall. No matter what you hear, do not make a sound. Su-wan. Nyang does not hesitate. She drags the quilt and slips into the shadow behind the statue. Chun-Su draws a deep breath. He faces the gate once more, eyes locked on the entrance. The doorway is narrow. Only one wolf can squeeze through at a time. That is his only advantage. Chun-Su draws the wood, cutting knife from his waist, and steps backward. He plants his feet firmly behind the scattered bricks and rope. Sweat beads in his palms. This body is still weak. Even after eating the bun and drinking water, it remains badly depleted. If he fails to hold them back, if he gets bitten in a vital spot, no, there are no ifs. He must hold them off. Creak. An unpleasant groan. The broken right hand door panel is forced open into a wide gap. A huge wolf's head pokes inside. Its frame is gaunt, matted fur clings to its body, and green eyes fix unblinkingly on Chun-Su. This wolf is ravenous. It ignores its natural fear of fire. Its hind legs push hard against the threshold. Carrying a fetid gust of wind, the starved wolf hurls itself through the gap like an arrow shot from a bow, straight for Chun-Su's throat. Mid-leap, the wolf's forelegs snap taut and strike the invisible barrier. The trip rope, the knee, high hemp cord snaps taut under the tremendous momentum and shakes violently, the tight knots anchored solidly to the stone pillars. Aru. The wolf loses balance in mid-air and lets out a shrill yelp. Its huge body pitches forward and crashes heavily onto the ground. It lands exactly where Chun-Su laid the sharp-edged broken bricks. Each brick sits with its jagged edge pointing upward. Squelch. The wolf's belly and soft inner thighs slam against the sharp brick edges. Sharp fragments tear straight through its pelt, ripping open deep gashes. Blood gushes out, instantly staining the dirt. Dazed from the fall and screaming in agony from its wounds, the wolf flies into a rage. It rolls free of the rope. Instead of retreating, it charges Chun-Su again, covered in its own blood, even more ferocious than before. Chun Tzu's eyes burn. He has waited for this exact moment. Die. Both hands grip the knife handle. He swings with every ounce of strength, chopping hard toward the wolf's skull. Wind whistles. Clang. A deafening clang echoes inside the ruined temple. The blade slams against the blue stone floor beside the wolf's head. Spark spray. Massive recoil surges up the wooden handle into Chun Tzu's palms. His tiger mouth splits open. Blood seeps out. His entire right arm goes numb, and the knife nearly flies from his grasp. He jerks the blade back. One glance at the edge, and his pupils contract. A chip the size of a fingernail has broken out of the knife blade. Damn, he missed. The fallen wolf gives him no time to recover. It digs its claws into the ground, lunges forward, and opens its foul, saliva-dripping jaws to snap at Chun Tzu's legs. Shocked, Chun Tzu staggers backward. Scattered bricks under his feet throw him off balance. He stumbles and falls backward onto his back. Rip! Wolf claws rake across Chun Tzu's calf, tearing his tattered trousers and carving 3 bleeding gashes into his flesh. Burning pain shoots through him. Behind the Buddha statue, Su Wan, Nyang's lips tremble at the sight of Chun Tzu falling. She instinctively covers Xiao Man's eyes with both hands. Woken by the noise, Xiao Man whimpers weakly in her arms. Father, father. That faint cry slams into Chun Tzu's mind. He cannot fall back. To fall back means death. Chun Tzu lies on the ground. The wolf leaps onto his chest, hot stinking breath blowing onto his face, jaws aiming straight for his throat. No time to get up. Chun Tzu shoves his left hand upward, jammed hard beneath the wolf's jaw. Wolf claws tear wildly at his chest, ripping his clothes and lacerating his skin. His right hand clutches the chipped wood cutting knife. No fancy moves, no refined technique. Die? Die. Chun Tzu grits his teeth and snarls like a beast. He drives the knife upward with all his might, stabbing deep into the wolf's belly. Blade sinks into flesh with a dull, wet sound. Pull out. Stab again. Blood surges wildly. Warm, thick wolf blood splatters all over Chun Tzu's face, blinding him. Yet he does not stop. His left hand locks the wolf's neck. He yanks the knife free, twists the blade, and hacks hard at the wolf's side of the neck. Once. Twice. The third blow. Crack. A clear snapping sound. The chipped knife finally severs the wolf's cervical vertebra. The ferocity fades from the wolf's eyes. Its massive body convulses violently, then goes limp. The heavy wolf corpse collapses fully on top of Chun Tzu. Chun Tzu gasps for air, his chest heaving. His face is caked in blood. He cannot tell how much is his own and how much belongs to the wolf. The air reeks of thick, overwhelming blood. Aolo. Outside, the rest of the pack goes wild at the scent of their comrade's blood. The pounding against the gate grows fiercer. Several wolves hurl themselves one after another at the narrow gap. The wooden door is on the verge of giving way. Chun Tzu's whole body trembles. He can barely lift his arms. Yet several more wolves wait outside. Their defenses are about to break. Chun Tzu bites his tongue hard. The sharp pain clears his mind. He struggles to shove the heavy corpse off himself. Bracing his hands against the ground, he drags himself upright. He cannot let the remaining wolves get inside. The doorway must be blocked. The only heavy object available is the dead wolf lying on the floor. Chun Tzu hobbles forward on his bleeding calf and bends down to drag the carcass. The instant his palm touches the wolf hide, the familiar mechanical voice rings inside his head. New location detected. Wolf corpse sign in? Sign in. Chun Tzu does not hesitate for a heartbeat. Sign. In successful at blood-soaked wolf corpse reward. Beast. Repelling powder times 1 packet stored in system backpack. Pull the quilt up over your faces. Cover your noses and mouths. Hold your breath. Chun Tzu roars without turning his head. Behind the Buddha statue, Su Wan, Nyang hears the urgency in his tone. She yanks the coarse quilt over Xiao Man and herself, draws a deep breath, and clamps her hands over nose and mouth. Outside, the door planks are near breaking. A second wolf shoves half its body through the crack, its green eyes fixed greedily on Chun Tzu. Chun Tzu holds his breath. By thought alone, a paper packet appears in his palm. He crushes the packet in one hand and flings the whole pouch of beast, repelling powder hard toward the temple entrance. Whoosh! Night wind blows inward through the crack. Yellowish, gray powder billows across the doorway. Some of it drifts back onto Chun Tzu. Biting, stinging fumes. Chun Tzu holds his breath. His eyes burn and stream with tears. The wolves outside react far worse. The wolf halfway inside the door sniffs the powder and lets out an ear-splitting shriek. It scrambles backward in panic. Chaos erupts beyond the gate. Aru. Sniff. Snarl. Sneezes and whimpers fill the air. Beasts possess a sense of smell hundreds of times sharper than humans. This powder burns their nasal passages like corrosive liquid. Scrabbling against the door stops entirely. Panicked footsteps echo outside. Wolves whimper as they flee back into the dark wilderness. Silence returns to the ruined temple. Only wind flapping tattered cloth remains, mixed with the cloying metallic stench of blood and sharp medicinal fumes. Chunsu leans against the cold wall. All tension drains from his body. He slides down to sit on the floor. He gasps heavily. Every inhale pulls at his torn chest muscles, bringing sharp agony. In the heat of mortal combat, he felt little. Now that danger passes, pain crashes over him in waves. He glances down. His trouser leg on the calf is torn open, 3 raw bleeding gashes showing exposed flesh. His chest is far worse. His linen shirt hangs in rags, torn open by wolf claws. Dust and wolf blood crusted over his wounds. The split gash across his right tiger. Mouth has crusted over on the wooden knife handle. His hands shake uncontrollably. Behind the statue, Su-Wan, Nyang carefully lifts the quilt once she is certain no threat remains. Lingering acrid fumes make her wrinkle her nose. Her gaze travels across the fire to the blood-covered man against the wall. The huge wolf corpse lies at the edge of the firelight. Chunsu looks like someone crawled out from a pool of gore, gasping against the wall. Su-Wan, Nyang's lips part. She stares at his horrifying injuries. Memories flash of him throwing himself bodily into combat with the wild wolf. The old Chunsu would have shoved her and Xiao Man forward to distract the wolf. Don't move. Let me tend to you. Su-Wan, Nyang speaks suddenly. Chunsu looks up, surprised. Su-Wan, Nyang avoids meeting his eyes. She quickly tears at the cleaner inner layer of her outer garment. Rip. Clear fabric. Tearing sounds ring out in the quiet temple. A relatively clean strip of white cloth is torn free. She steps over to Chunsu and crouches down before him. If you collapse, Xiao Man and I will not survive either. Su-Wan, Nyang stares at his chest wounds and adds flatly. Chunsu gives a faint smile. Hiding his hands behind his back, he concentrates, and the filled water pouch materializes in his grasp. The wounds need washing, or they will fester. I found this water while checking the backyard earlier. A flimsy excuse, yet in times of famine, water is life. No one will question the details. Su-Wan, Nyang takes the pouch and pulls out the stopper. She tilts it carefully. Clear water flows over Chunsu's chest lacerations, washing away blood and dirt onto the ground. Agony twists Chunsu's features, yet he grits his teeth and makes no sound. Su-Wan, Nyang pours slowly and carefully. Once his chest is cleaned. Wait. Chunsu speaks up and takes back the pouch. I need a drink. He tilts his head back to drink. Hidden behind his ragged sleeve, the pouch vanishes briefly inside the system space before reappearing once more. The previously half-emptied cowhide pouch is full again. He wipes his mouth and hands it back to her. Su-Wan, Nyang accepts it to clean the gashes on his calf. The moment her hands close around the pouch, she freezes. The weight feels wrong. They poured out well over half a liter washing his chest. How can the pouch feel heavier still? Su-Wan, Nyang looks at the water pouch, then glances toward Chunsu. Chunsu meets her gaze calmly. That well in the backyard holds deep water. I worked hard to draw it. We must use it sparingly. Su-Wan, Nyang pushes her doubts aside and continues cleaning his wounds. She takes the torn cloth strip and begins wrapping his calf injury. Her fingers unavoidably brush against his skin. Her fingertips are cold and tremble faintly. Under ordinary circumstances, she would never draw so near to this man. She winds the cloth and ties the knot. Seeing blood still seeping through the bandage, she speaks quietly. Does it still hurt? Chunsu leans against the wall and watches her focused profile. No, just minor scratches. As he finishes speaking, Su-Wan, Nyang pulls the final knot tight with firm force. Hiss. Caught off guard, Chunsu sucks in a sharp breath, eyes watering. Su-Wan, Nyang stands, glances down at him, and says evenly, You are still hurting. Chunsu gives a bitter smile. This woman has a far stiffer temper than he expected. Father. From beneath the quilt in the corner, Xiao Man pokes out her small head. Fever medicine has brought her complexion back to fair. Her big eyes blink toward them. Chunsu's expression softens instantly. Sleep, little one. Father is here. Hearing his gentle tone, Su-Wan, Nyang's body stiffens. She says nothing more. She tucks the leftover scrap of cloth into Chunsu's palm and walks back to their corner. Do not push yourself so hard next time. She sits down with her back toward him and pulls the quilt tight around Xiao Man. Chunsu holds the cloth that still carries her body warmth. He gazes at her back and nods. I understand. After resting a while and regaining some strength, Chunsu pushes himself upright against the wall. Blood and gore litter the floor. The heavy scent of blood will draw more creatures if left uncleaned. Yet the beast, repelling powder has already been completely used up. Chun-Su checks his system backpack. Beast, repelling powder ×1. With a thought, a bulging craft paper sack reappeared in his palm. He tore open the paper sack. Stepping aside, he scooped up a handful of dry, loose soil, poured in half a packet of beast, repellent powder, and mixed them thoroughly. Carrying the soil laced with medicinal powder, he went to the doorway and spread a thick layer all along the threshold. Once the powder was used up, he stowed the sack away in his backpack. When he pulled it out again, it was once more brimming full. He sprinkled the medicated soil along the outer base of the ruined temple's walls, the broken window openings, and even the passage connecting the backyard to the front hall. The sharp, acrid stench completely covered the smell of blood. When he finished, Chun-Su limped over to the massive wolf carcass and grabbed hold of its 2 hind legs with both hands. Bracing his back, his face flushed with effort, Chun-Su dragged the wolf corpse step by step toward the fire, leaving a long trail of blood across the ground. After resetting the trip, ropes and scattered broken bricks, Chun-Su picked up the hatchet lying on the ground. Its wooden handle was stained with blood, and its cutting edge was nicked and bent. Worst of all, a semicircular chunk the size of a fingernail had been sheared out of the middle of the blade. Chun-Su stroked the handle, his gaze flickering. Take a bite out of a steamed bun and put it back, and it restores itself. Tip out half the water from the water skin and stow it away, and it fills back up. What about a damaged weapon? Chun-Su drew a deep breath and silently ordered in his mind, store. The hatchet with the broken edge vanished from his hand, settling securely into the faintly glowing slot of his system backpack. Chun-Su stared intently at the gray interface in his mind. The icon lit up. Retrieve. A flash of light, and Chun-Su's right hand sank abruptly under the weight. A cold, iron, scented weapon returned to his palm. By firelight, Chun-Su held up the hatchet and studied it closely. The wooden handle was clean, free of any bloodstains. The blade was smooth and bright, glinting with a grim metallic sheen. The gap that had been the size of a fingernail was gone, not merely gone, but perfectly filled and restored. Chun-Su's breathing grew ragged. The system backpack did not just reset quantities. As long as the remnants of an item were returned, the system restored it to its original state from the day he had first signed in for it. Then an even wilder thought surfaced in Chun-Su's mind. If a damaged hatchet could be restored, what about the broken fragments that had broken off? Staring at the repaired notch on the blade, Chun-Su rubbed his tingling cheeks hard. If a broken blade could be mended, what about the shard of metal that had chipped off? He spun around. The huge wolf carcass had been dragged away, leaving only a thick pool of dark, clotted blood and mud on the flagstones. Leaning against the wall for support, Chun-Su limped over, his still, bleeding left leg throbbing with every step. Ignoring the sharp pain tearing at his wound, he plunged his dirt-caked hands into the sticky pool of blood mud. His fingertips sifted through gravel and congealed clots. It was cold and slimy. Firewood crackled in the bonfire. Su Wanyang huddled under a quilt holding Xiao Man. Hearing the noise, she peeked out cautiously. Outside, the man was bent over, rummaging through pools of blood on the ground. What are you looking for? Su Wanyang's voice was dry, sharp with instinctive wariness. Without lifting his head, Chun-Su replied, the blade chipped. I need to find the fragment before dawn, or it might cut the child. Su Wanyang frowned. She tucked the quilt tighter around Xiao Man, her gaze lingering on Chun-Su's back for a moment before she lowered her eyes again. The blood mud was icy. Suddenly Chun-Su's fingertips brushed against a sharp point. He pinched it between 2 fingers and pried it free from the half-congealed clot. By the dim firelight, he saw a metal shard no bigger than a fingernail, its edges razor, sharp, still tangled with a few strands of wolf fur. Chun-Su's breath quickened. Store. The shard vanished from his palm. Simultaneously, a hatchet icon appeared on the gray interface in his mind. Chun-Su's breath caught. It could really be stored. The system recognized this tiny fragment as part of the hatchet. Retrieve. His palm sank heavily. Cold, solid metal pressed into his hand. He gripped a brand new hatchet, its wooden handle smooth and its blade polished and menacing. Turning his back to Su Wanyang, Chun-Su took deep, heaving breaths. Calm down. He now held 2 hatchets, one restored inside his backpack and another duplicated from the broken fragment. Though he could forge more hatchets this way, smashing blades to produce shards made far too much noise. It would draw starving refugees or wild beasts, far too risky. With a thought, he stowed the extra hatchet back into his system backpack. Weapons were not his top priority right now. Food and water were. I'm going to the doorway to check if the medicinal fumes have faded. Chunsu stood and grabbed a handful of dry soil. He turned towards Su Wanyang. Hide further behind the statue. Don't let Xiao Man catch a chill. Su Wanyang gave him a long, silent look. Holding the child, she retreated deep into the shadows, completely out of sight. Chunsu slipped to a blind spot beside the temple gate and leaned against the wall. With a thought, 2 steaming white, flour-steamed buns materialized in his hands. He split one bun in half, holding one piece in his left hand and the other half in his right. Then he stowed the half bun in his right hand into the system backpack. The gray slot lit up, numbers flickering. White, flour-steamed bun ×2. Light gleamed in Chunsu's eyes, but he did not celebrate yet. He moved on to his next test. He tossed the remaining half bun from his left hand directly into the backpack. This time the numbers shifted. White, flour-steamed bun ×2.5. It cannot stack infinitely? Chunsu furrowed his brow, his mind racing. He tried another approach. He pulled all 2.5 buns out of the backpack and set them on a tattered scrap of cloth at his feet. The storage slot for steamed buns emptied completely. Chunsu picked up the loose half bun and placed it back into the slot. Ding! The dim slot blazed to life, the numbers reappearing. White, flour-steamed bun ×2. Chunsu smiled silently. He understood now. If the slot already held complete items, adding partial fragments would do nothing. But empty the slot entirely, and even a half bun would be completed back to its original size. In quantity, 2 full steamed buns. Chunsu rubbed his hands together, the corners of his mouth lifting. Time to farm resources. Empty the slot. Insert fragment. Generate. Split. Store. Retrieve. Store. Retrieve. The motions looked simple, yet Chunsu dared not pause. Dawn was drawing near. Su Wanyang might wake at any moment, and this exploit might vanish without warning. He had to gather as many supplies as he possibly could. Steamed buns piled up on the scrap of cloth at an impossible rate. 4, 8, 16, 50, 100, 200. Half an hour later, a mountain of rich, aroma-steamed buns lay heaped on the ground. Chunsu swept all of them into his system backpack. The first slot capped out at 999, and a new gray slot lit up beside it. White, flour-steamed bun ×999. White, flour-steamed bun ×7. Chunsu stared at the numbers, his atoms apple-bobbing hard. On this refugee trail, a single moldy corn bun could spark deadly bloodshed. More than 1,000 white, flour-steamed buns. How long could they sustain 3 people? 1,006 buns in total. A single storage slot had a maximum capacity of 999 items. Chunsu pulled out those 7 extra buns and wrapped them in rags. He was about to continue when Xiao Man stirred behind the statue and mumbled softly. Chunsu froze instantly. Only after Su Wanyang settled the child back to sleep did he exhale slowly. Dawn was near. Next he had to duplicate water. Chunsu pulled a water skin from his backpack and pulled out the wooden stopper. He stored only the stopper inside the backpack, leaving the water skin empty in his hands. The slot lit. Water skin ×1. Retrieve. A full water skin, stopper firmly in place, dropped into his grasp. He placed that full water skin into storage. Again the slot lit. Water skin ×1. Retrieve. Another brand. New full water skin appeared. Chunsu did not hesitate, repeating the cycle. Pull stopper, store, retrieve. Night wind whistled through cracks in the broken walls, unable to cool the sweat pouring down Chunsu's forehead. The gash on his chest throbbed hotly, and the bandages wrapped around his leg were soaked through with blood. Pale gray lights spilled over the horizon, the first faint glow of dawn seeping through the temple gates. The sharp fumes of beast, repellent powder gradually faded from the air. Chunsu stowed the mountain of water skins into his system backpack. White, flour-steamed bun ×999, water skin ×999. Leaning against the wall, Chunsu gazed at the 2 slots in his mind. His wolf, claw wounds burned painfully, yet his breath came light with elation. 990, 9 steamed buns. 990, 9 water skins of fresh water. In this drought-stricken land where whole villages lay abandoned and desperate folk resorted to unspeakable acts for survival, men would tear each other's throats apart for a handful of murky greenish water. Overnight, he had gained a private granary all his own. Only dim red embers remained in the fire, sputtering softly. Su Wanyang stepped out from the shadow behind the Buddha statue holding Xiao Man. Seeing his deathly pale face, she approached with quiet steps. Have you not slept all night? Chunsu did not stand. He picked up a charred stick and stirred and smothered the last glowing embers of the fire. Could not sleep. He tossed the stick aside and lifted his gaze past the crumbling temple doors toward the gray wilderness beyond. The temple still held the dozens of pounds of meat from the wolf. Every refugee in the traveling party was half crazed with hunger. Alone and injured, Chun-Su could never defend that carcass. Besides, he no longer lacked food. The refugee road stretched long. No one survived traveling alone, least of all while protecting two others. Better to trade the meat for security. He rose to his feet and drew his hatchet from his waist. He met Su Wanyang's complicated gaze, his voice steady and firm. Dawn has broken. Gather your things. Su Wanyang stared in bewilderment. Where are we going? Chun-Su looked toward the far end of the wilderness. We returned to the refugee column. Morning mist drifted across the desolate road. 2 miles away, more than 100 refugees were breaking camp. The land was barren, every scrap of bark stripped from the trees. Several bodies lay on the ground, people who had not lived through the night. Crows circled overhead, their hoarse cries echoing. Beside a campfire on the edge of the group, Zhao Laosan leaned against a rock, scraping the last flecks of bran from a broken pottery bowl with his fingernail. Several haggard refugees huddled nearby. Zhao Laosan spat on the dirt and sneered. Did you hear that wolf howling from the ruined temple last night? It was horrible. A look of malicious glee crossed his face. Lazy Chun and his family are most likely nothing but bones by now. I offered to take his daughter off his hands last night, let him trade her for a little bran. But he had to act tough. A gaunt man licked his cracked lips and whispered, Is Su sure gone too? That woman was quite pretty. Dead for sure, Zhao Laosan scoffed. That temple has no proper doors. Once wolves burst in, no one survives. Chun-Su got what he deserved for stealing food from the group. His words died mid-sentence. The gaunt man stared rigidly down the road, speechless. Zhao Laosan frowned. What is wrong with you? Seen a ghost? He followed the man's gaze. The morning mist parted. A blood-stained figure trundled toward them along the barren road. It was Chun-Su. Crusted blood matted his hair. His tattered linen robe was stained dark red and clung to his chest. The trouser leg over his left leg was torn, wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. He limped as he walked. In his left hand, he dragged a gray wolf leg. The heavy wolf carcass trailed behind him, drawing a bright streak of blood across the sand. Coughs, curses, and the clink of pots throughout the refugee column fell completely silent. 100 pairs of eyes locked onto Chun-Su, then fixed on the enormous wolf corpse. Zhao Laosan's jaw hung open. The broken wooden stick in his hand clattered to the ground. Behind Chun-Su, Su Wanyang followed closely, Xiaoman wrapped tight in her quilt. Her skin was still sallow and her clothes thin, yet her steps were far steadier than the night before. Greedy, astonished stares from the refugees swept over them. Su Wanyang bit her lip, hurried to walk half a step behind Chun-Su, and held her child tighter. El lazy Chun. Zhao Laosan's throat bobbed. Some men stared at the deep, neck-severing gash on the wolf and felt chills crawl up their spines. The good-for-nothing had not only survived, he had killed a wolf. The smell of fresh blood drifted across the camp. Someone swallowed loudly. Meat, fresh meat. On the refugee trail, people ate clay to stay alive. Fresh meat was beyond imagining. A dozen starving, able-bodied men stood to their feet, eyes glowing with hunger, and slowly moved to surround Chun-Su. Zhao Laosan recovered, glancing at Chun-Su's hatchet, then at the men driven mad by the scent of meat. An idea flickered across his face. He shouted at the top of his voice. Chun-Su, you stole rations from the group last night. This wolf must be handed over for everyone to share. This is your compensation to us all. At those words, the closing crowd quickened their pace. Voices rose. Yes, for the collective. It belongs to the group. He stole food. The meat is ours. Su Wanyang's breath caught as the crowd drew near. She reached out and gripped the rope tied around Chun-Su's waist, shielding Xiaoman against her chest. Chun-Su stopped walking. He let go of the wolf's leg and straightened up. The movement pulled at his chest wound, making him wince. He lifted his hatchet. Morning light glinted coldly along its sharp edge. Chun-Su fixed his stare on Zhao Laosan at the front of the mob, angling the blade downward so its tip pointed at the ground. He took one half step forward. The ferocious aura of a man who had just killed a wolf rolled off him. The men at the front of the mob halted. Starvation was one thing. Getting cut down by a blade was another. Zhao Laosan shrank back into the crowd, unnerved by Chun-Su's gaze. You would dare attack people? Silence. A rough roar boomed from the center of the refugee column. The crowd parted to make way. Zhou Kuei strode forward. He was tall, bald, broad-shouldered, wearing worn leather armor and carrying a heavy-bladed broadsword. He was the leader of the refugee band, a former caravan guard who had seen plenty of blood. His toughness had kept this 100-strong group alive on the road. Zhou Kuei came into the open. He shot a sharp look at Zhao Laosan, who immediately fell quiet and ducked his head. Then Zhou Kuei's eyes fell on the wolf corpse at Chen Si's feet. The fatal wound bit deep into its neck, vertebrae snapped. Next he studied Chen Si. Ragged clothes, dried blood, fresh wounds, a limp, and that clean hatchet in his hand. He had always dismissed the man they called Lazy Chun, but no longer. Zhou Kuei's voice rumbled low. Chen Si, you bring this beast back. What do you want? I have terms, Chen Si replied calmly. He gave the wolf carcass a hard kick, sliding it to within a foot of Zhou Kuei's boots. Swallowing sounds rippled through the onlookers. Zhou Kuei's trusted men lit up at the sight. Dozens of pounds of wolf meat. I leave it for you to distribute. Chen Si met Zhou Kuei's eyes. Zhou Kuei's fingers tightened around the hilt of his sword. That much meat could feed his core fighting men for 3 full days and hold the group together. Your conditions, Zhou Kuei said, sharp-witted enough to know the meat was not a gift. Chen Si held up 2 fingers. First, the meat is yours to hand out as you see fit, but I earned it risking my life. Drop all past charges about me stealing group rations. Zhao Laosan's face darkened with rage in the crowd behind. Second, give me medicinal salves for wounds. Chen Si gestured to his bleeding leg and chest. And grant my family safe placement within the core of the column. We march in the middle by day and camp beside your fire at night. Traveling on the outer fringes was deadly. Wild beasts snatched people, bandits raided. Those on the perimeter died first. Though Chen Si hoarded food, he dared not reveal it. Injured as he was, he needed the protection of the group. Zhou Kuei observed him for a long moment. This man was not merely brutal, he thought clearly. Gifting him the wolf meat amounted to a huge favor. The bargain was too good to refuse. Zhou Kuei suddenly asked, were you playing the fool all this time? Chen Si met his gaze. When you are cornered, you fight to live. Zhou Kuei nodded. A man capable of slaying a wolf was far more valuable to the group than a useless idler. Bring the medicine. Zhou Kuei snapped to his followers. One subordinate ran over and handed Chen Si 2 oil paper packets. Zhou Kuei watched Chen Si take the medicine. The meat is mine. Your old offenses are wiped clean. He turned and roared to the surrounding refugees. Break camp and move out. Anyone stirring up trouble over food will answer to my blade. The crowd bowed their heads. Zhao Laosan looked as though he had swallowed something foul-tasting. Zhou Kuei turned back to Chen Si. Once we march, you, your wife, and your child travel close behind me. I thank you, Leader Zhou. Chen Si answered without subservience, sliding his hatchet back into the rope at his waist. He turned towards Su Wanyang, who had stayed close behind him. Come into the inner circle, he said. Su Wanyang stared at his upright back, then glanced at Zhao Laosan, who could only glare helplessly. She tightened her hold on Xiao Man and nodded firmly. Yes. Chen Si set off, leading Su Wanyang and the child into the heart of the refugee column. The long procession shuffled forward. As he walked, Chen Si's eyes drifted toward the tattered cart in the middle of the group. This was the safe core of the refugee band. What would he get when he signed in here? Chen Si led Su Wanyang and Xiao Man, stepping toward the very middle of the refugee column. This was where Zhou Kuei and his trusted men stayed, with a rickety wooden cart parked at the center. The cart's planks were split wide enough to fit a finger, piled high with supplies. Chen Si pointed to an empty spot beside the broken cart. Rest here for a while. Su Wanyang nodded, set Xiao Man down on the ground, then turned to untie her tattered bundle slung over her back. Refugees on the outer fringes kept glancing their way, their eyes brimming with envy. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. That good-for-nothing Chun is really odd. That wolf must have weighed dozens of jin. How could a man in his condition kill it? Who knows? Maybe the wolf ran headfirst into a temple gate and died, and he just got lucky. Lucky? Could luck snap a wolf's neck? Didn't you see the blood all over him, his clothes torn to shreds by its claws? The refugees whispered among themselves, yet none dared raise their voices. The heavy stench of wolf blood clung to Chen Si, and the ferocity he'd shown earlier sent chills down their spines. Ignoring the chatter, Chen Si walked over to the broken wooden cart in the middle of the group. A cold mechanical voice echoed inside his mind. New location detected. Central campsite of the refugee caravan sign-in? Chen Si's heart jolted. He did not hesitate for a second. Sign-in. Sign-in successful. Central campsite of the refugee caravan reward. Old military map, ×1 stored in system backpack. An old military map? Chen Si raised an eyebrow slightly. On the road of fleeing famine, the worst fear was traveling blind, with no idea what lay ahead, mountains, waters, or bandit dens. With a thought, he slipped his hand inside his wide tattered sleeve. Something settled heavy in his palm, a roll of rough sheepskin. Shielded by his sleeve, he slowly unfurled it. The sheepskin was ancient, its edges frayed. Dense black ink lines and markings covered its surface. It mapped the terrain for 100 li around. Their current position was beside a dried-up riverbed. 20 li further along the riverbed, a distinct black that was drawn on the map. Tiny characters beside the dot read, Heishui Village. Heishui Village. A sharp glint lit up Chen Su's eyes. What did a village mean? A whole village's worth of sign-in spots. A rundown temple had granted him 999 steamed buns. What kinds of supplies could an entire village yield? Huh. A sound came from afar. Chen Su turned his head. Zhao Laosan stood amid the outer crowd, spitting a thick yellow gob onto the ground, his face twisted with resentment. He had hoped Chen Su and his family would perish in the ruined temple. Instead, Chen Su had survived, traded wolf meat for a spot in the inner circle. And Zhao Laosan seethed with hatred. Su Wanyang also spotted Zhao Laosan. She edged closer to Chen Su and lowered her voice. So many eyes watching us. Zhao Laosan will not let this go. Inside our bundle. She trailed off, yet her meaning was clear. She feared Zhao Laosan would rally men to rob their bundle, which still held steamed buns and the water-skin Chen Su had given her that morning. Chen Su stowed the sheepskin map back into his system backpack and brushed dust off his hands. What's there to fear? Zhou Kuei is keeping order here. Even if Zhao Laosan had 10 guts, he wouldn't dare rob us openly. Rest easy. Save your strength. We still have a long road ahead. Looking at Chen Su's comm profile, much of Su Wanyang's inner panic faded away. Chen Su closed his eyes and leaned against an earthen embankment behind him. The caravan halted for half an hour to rest. Zhou Kuei stood up and roared in a coarse voice. Everyone up. We march. The refugees dragged their weary bodies to their feet and trundled slowly forward along the overgrown track. Chen Su's family walked behind the broken wooden cart, surrounded by Zhou Kuei's loyal men. Greedy as the outer refugees were, none dared cross the line. They traveled all morning. The sun blazed hotter by the minute. 3 years of severe drought had left not a wisp of cloud in the sky. The sun hung overhead like a blazing brazier scorching the land. Bark had long been stripped from trees lining the track, leaving bare trunks pointing toward the heavens. Halt. Rest. The caravan collapsed to the ground like mud. Refugees gasped for breath, some with lips cracked and oozing blood. Chen Su made his way to a withered tree and slowly sat down against its trunk. His face was deathly pale, sweat pouring down his forehead. Walking had strained the gash on his left leg repeatedly. Sweat seeped into the claw marks across his chest, sending stabbing pain through him, making his vision blur. Su Wanyang set Xiao Man down nearby. She saw Chen Su grind his teeth, clutching his chest, sweat and blood gluing his linen shirt to his wounds. Su Wanyang bit her lip, stepped forward and squatted before him. Your wounds have split open again? Chen Su opened his eyes and glanced at her, his voice weak. I won't die. A little rest will do. Su Wanyang pulled out the 2 packets of trauma medicine Zhou Kuei had given her that morning, along with the water skin from their bundle. Take your shirt off, she said, staring firmly at his chest, her tone leaving no room for argument. Chen Su wasted no time on modesty. With one hand, he undid the rope around his waist and tore his tattered linen shirt open. Rip! Cloth stuck fast to raw flesh tore free, exposing torn, inflamed skin that looked gruesome. Su Wanyang drew in a sharp breath, her hands trembling. She pulled the cork from the water skin, poured water onto a scrap of cloth, and gently dabbed at his wounds. Water stung the inflamed flesh, and every muscle in Chen Su tensed. Shout if it hurts. No need to hold it in, Su Wanyang said without pausing her work. It doesn't hurt. Chen Su ground out through gritted teeth. Su Wanyang shot him a look, yet her movements grew gentler. Once the wounds were cleaned, she sprinkled medicinal powder evenly over the injured areas. The powder foamed on contact with blood. Veins bulged on Chen Su's forehead from the agony. Su Wanyang worked swiftly. After tending his chest, she bent to undo the bandages wrapped around his left leg. That's enough. Chen Su caught her wrist. The leg is fine. Leave it be. Startled by the warmth of his hand, Su Wanyang pulled back. She turned her face away and put the remaining half-packet of medicine away. Meanwhile, several burly men carried the dozens-gene wolf carcass to the center of the clearing. The wolf's blood had drained away, its fur dull gray, yet its meat remained substantial. More than 100 pairs of eyes locked onto the corpse. Some swallowed hard. Others scrambled forward, their eyes burning with hunger. Zhou Kuei stood beside the wolf carcass, holding a heavy-backed broadsword. Clang, clang, clang. He struck a nearby stone with the flat of his blade. Get back. Anyone who takes another step forward dies by my sword. Zhou Kuei bellowed. The crowd shrank backward, yet they could not tear their gazes away from the meat. Zhao Laosan pushed his way to the front of the throng. Starvation made his legs shake. He stared at the wolf meat, then glanced toward Chunsa sitting beneath the dead tree, rage boiling inside him. Why should that good-for-nothing enjoy the safety of the inner circle while he scraped by on nothing out here? He suddenly jumped out from the crowd, pointing toward Chun Su and shouting at the top of his lungs. Chief Zhou, listen to me. That lad Chun Su must be hiding supplies. Zhao Laosan's shout brought complete silence over the clearing. Over 100 pairs of eyes swiveled toward Chun Su and the tattered bundle beside Su Wanyang. Several strong young men from the outer ring stood and took 2 steps forward, their eyes glinting with hunger. Su Wanyang paled. She hugged Xiaoman tight and huddled behind Chun Su. Inside that bundle were real white flour steamed buns and water. If they were discovered, not only would their supplies be stolen, the 3 of them would no longer be safe within the caravan. Chun Su sat on the ground and slowly stretched out his left leg. The next instant, zing! A wood-cutting knife slid free from its sheath. Chun Su twisted his wrist and drove the blade tip into the dirt right in front of him, the hilt still trembling. He lifted his gaze toward Zhao Laosan, his voice calm, yet laced with menace. If anyone wants to see what is in my bundle, come and get it yourselves. His fingers rested lightly on the hilt. His gaze swept over the young men who had advanced. The first man to reach for it loses an arm today. Zhao Laosan and the young men froze in their tracks. Fear pricked at them as they stared at the knife in Chun Su's hand. Hiding in the crowd, Zhao Laosan shouted insults. Chun Su, don't try to scare us. Do you think you can fight all of us alone? He turned toward Zhou Kuei and raised his voice even louder. Chief Zhou, look how arrogant he is. He shows you no respect. He hoards food and breaks the rules. At Zhao Laosan's words, unrest stirred among the refugees. If he isn't hiding something, why object to a search? A quick search won't hurt him. If he really has food, he ought to share it with everyone. Zhou Kuei stood beside the wolf carcass, gripping his heavy broadsword, his face dark. He looked from Chun Su to Zhao Laosan. Then he strode forward. Zhao Laosan hastily stepped aside, grinning. Chief, this lad is definitely hiding. Smack. A loud slap echoed. Zhou Kuei's huge palm swung hard and struck Zhao Laosan full across the face. Zhao Laosan spun halfway around and crashed onto the ground, spitting blood mixed with 2 yellow teeth. Dead silence fell over the clearing. Everyone who had been creeping forward drew back. Zhao Laosan clutched his rapidly swelling cheek, dazed on the ground. See, Chief, why are you hitting me? He is the one hiding things. Zhou Kuei stepped forward, planted a foot on Zhao Laosan's chest. He pressed his broadsword against the man's throat. Cold steel made Zhao Laosan shudder all over. Do you take me for blind or a fool? Zhou Kuei's voice was low yet furious. I inspected the wolf Chun Su handed over. Not a scrap of its pelt was missing. What could he possibly have hidden? In his mouth. Zhou Kuei's anger flared higher. He was the caravan leader because he upheld rules. Chun Su had traded an entire wolf for safe inner circle placement for his family. This bargain had been struck before everyone's eyes. By stirring up trouble, Zhao Laosan was not merely consumed by envy. He was publicly defying Zhou Kuei's authority. This morning, I warned everyone. Anyone who stirs up strife over food will answer to my blade. Zhou Kuei pressed harder with his foot. Zhao Laosan's chest constricted, and he could barely breathe. Did you take my words for nothing, Zhao Laosan? Terror overwhelmed Zhao Laosan. Urine soaked his trousers, and a foul stench spread across the ground beneath him. Chief, I beg for mercy. I will never do it again. Spare my life. Zhou Kuei stepped away in disgust, sheathed his sword, and scanned the crowd of refugees. Listen well, all of you. Chun Su traded a wolf for inner circle passage for his wife and child. That is the rule. If any of you disagree, go hunt a wolf out in the wilderness, and you too may join us here. But if anyone spreads malicious rumors from now on, my sword will settle it. The refugees bowed their heads. Chun Su slid his wood-cutting knife back into his waist sheath and sat down once more beneath the tree. Su Wanyang let out a long breath, her back soaked with cold sweat. As she looked at Chun Su's profile, a sense of security settled over her heart. A large iron pot was set up. Several women assigned to tend the fire labored hard. Chunks of wolf meat, bones and all, were tossed into the boiling pot. Soon water bubbled vigorously. A rich aroma of cooked meat drifted through the camp. Every person stretched their necks, sniffing greedily. Zhou Kuei stood beside the pot, holding a large wooden ladle. Follow the rules. First, the strong men of the inner circle. Next, those who contributed supplies. Last, the outer refugees. No one dared rush forward. The two teeth still lying on the ground served as a stark warning. When Chun Su's turn came, one of Zhou Kuei's trusted men filled his bowl generously. Inside were 2 large chunks of wolf meat and a bone full of marrow. Chun Su carried his wooden bowl back behind the broken cart. Smelling meat, Xiao Man's saliva dripped down her chin. Turning his back to the crowd, Chun Su shielded the bowl with his body. He set the bowl down. With a thought, he opened his system backpack. A steaming white flour steamed bun materialized in his hand, followed by a strip of dried meat. Working quickly, he tore the bun into small pieces and dropped them into the broth. He shredded the dried meat and mixed it in with the wolf meat and soup. What had once been simple meat broth now became a thick, hearty soup soaked with bun pieces. He pushed the bowl towards Su Wanyang. Eat. Be careful not to let others see. Su Wanyang glanced down and nearly gaped. White chunks of steamed bun floated in the meat broth, mixed with dried meat. Such fine food was unthinkable for people fleeing famine. In all her years married into the Chen family, she had never eaten so well, not even during New Year celebrations. She looked toward Chun Su, her lips parting as if to ask questions. But seeing his calm expression, she held her tongue. She picked up her wooden spoon, scooped some cooled broth with bun, and held it to Xiao Man's lips. Xiao Man ate. Warm, savory broth, soft bun, and chewy dried meat slid down her throat into her stomach. The little girl's eyes lit up. A faint flush returned to her pale cheeks. Tasty, mother, the meat is tasty. Her small hands clung tightly to Su Wanyang, afraid this precious meal would vanish. Su Wanyang ate several mouthfuls. The steamed bun soaked in fatty wolf broth tasted wonderful. She had never eaten so well since fleeing the disaster. After a few bites, Su Wanyang paused. She glanced out at the crowd, quickly pulled another steamed bun from their bundle, and pushed the bowl and bun toward Chun Su. She moved fast and spoke in a hushed whisper. You eat too. Chun Su glanced at her. Su Wanyang avoided his gaze. She stood up, holding Xiao Man and turning slightly as if to stretch her cramped legs. Her position perfectly blocked the view from outsiders. Chun Su noted her quick-witted thoughtfulness. He did not refuse. He broke off a piece of bun and ate it with the broth. Full stomachs brought warmth, and strength slowly returned to their bodies. Xiao Man leaned against Su Wanyang's arms, her spirits greatly lifted. Her big eyes blinked as she looked up at Chun Su, and she reached out to curl her small hand around his finger. Father is so powerful. Father can get meat. Chun Su gently squeezed her little hand and smiled. From now on, Father will get meat for you every day. Xiao Man's eyes shone brighter. Not far away, most refugees received only a small bowl of thin soup with barely a speck of meat. They held their bowls, staring longingly toward Chun Su's family. Look how well Chen's family is eating. He has wolf meat. Of course he eats well. Zhao Laosan squatted on the ground, his face badly swollen. He licked the last traces of soup from his bowl, grinding his teeth as he glared in Chun Su's direction. The sun sank westward. The worst of the heat eased, yet the air remained stifling. Zhou Kuei walked to the broken cart and banged the hilt of his sword against the cart shaft. Everyone up. Stop pretending to be dead. We will travel another 5 li before dark. The refugees groaned as they rose and shuffled onward. The caravan followed the dried-up riverbed. Cracked yellow mud and sharp stones beneath their feet made walking agony. Zhou Kuei halted and frowned as he studied the landscape ahead. There is a fork in the road. Which way should we go? Li Ergu craned his neck toward the earthen hills and spoke quickly. Cross over the mountains. High ground gives us a better view. One of his trusted men immediately objected. Have you lost your mind? Half of these people can barely walk. Climbing mountains will kill several of them. Then what do you suggest? Follow the riverbed. Water always flows downwards. It must lead us to inhabited land eventually. The river has been dry for 3 years. What good does talking about flowing water do? The two men argued. Panic spread through the refugees behind them. Are we lost? We are going to die out here, aren't we? Zhou Kuei's face darkened. He slammed his sword against the ground. Silence, all of you. At that moment, Chun Su stepped out from behind the cart. His injured left leg slowed his pace, yet every step he took was steady. Chief Zhou, follow the riverbed. Chun Su's voice was not loud, yet it quieted the commotion. Another dozen li ahead lies a place called Heishui Village. Zhou Kuei turned toward him. Heishui Village? How do you know of it? Chun Su slipped his hand into his sleeve. With a thought, the old military map appeared in his palm. He handed the sheepskin scroll to Zhou Kuei. I picked this map up in town long ago. Look, Zhou Kuei took it. He could not read many characters, but he understood the lines drawn on parchment. Marked at the end of the riverbed was a village label, with 3 small characters beside it. Heishui Village. At the caravan's current pace, they would arrive by tomorrow. Zhou Kuei gripped the map and gritted his teeth. Very well. We follow the riverbed on your word. Someone in the crowd muttered. Trusting a tattered old map? What if it leads us astray? Zhou Kuei did not look back. Then you lead us. If you fail to bring us to safety, my sword will be on you. The muttering died instantly. Zhou Kuei slung his broadsword over his shoulder and roared. Gather your things. March. The caravan advanced down the dry riverbed. Sharp stones hurt their feet, and the sun made heads swim. Refugees grumbled as they walked, yet none dared stop with Zhou Kuei guarding the front. Chen Su walked beside the broken cart. Su Wanyang carried their bundle and held Xiaoman's hand. Xiaoman soon grew weary from walking. Her little face flushed from sunlight. She tilted her head towards Su Wanyang and whispered, Mother, I'm thirsty. Su Wanyang's heart tightened. She touched her bundle and paused. The water skin inside was long empty. At noon, she had cleaned Chen Su's wounds, given Xiaoman water to drink, and taken a few sips herself. Not a drop remained. Su Wanyang pressed her parched lips together and whispered in a soothing tone, Bear it a little longer. Once we make camp, Mother will find a way. Xiaoman nodded obediently, yet the child was still young. Her throat burned with thirst, and her eyes quickly reddened. Chen Su heard Xiaoman's whimper. He glanced sideways. The refugees ahead trudged along with their heads bowed. Zhou Kuei's confidence pushed the cart on its other side. No one was looking this way. He slipped his hand inside his wide sleeve. In the next moment, a bulging cowhide water skin settled in his palm. He passed it to Su Wanyang, his voice lowered to a murmur. Let the child take a few sips. Don't let anyone see. Su Wanyang stared sharply at him. This water skin, its cowhide was dark-toned, with a lopsided stitched seam along one side. It was identical to the empty one in her bundle. Su Wanyang's hand hung suspended in midair. Chen Su pressed the water skin firmly into her grasp. Xiaoman won't hold out much longer. Those words cut off all her questions. She immediately lifted Xiaoman, shielding her from outside view with her body, pulled out the wooden stopper, and carefully held the skin to the child's lips. Fresh water touched Xiaoman's mouth, and her eyes lit up at once. She swallowed in small mouthfuls, unwilling to drink too fast. Su Wanyang moistened her own lips slightly. The water tasted sweet. She stared down at the water skin, her fingers tightening slowly. Chen Su's gaze drifted to the rear left. Zhao Laosan lingered on the outer edge of the crowd. His face was badly swollen, yet his eyes never rested. He kept watching the bundle at Chen Su's waist. Chen Su had seen that exact look the night before. Darkness fell completely. The group set up camp on a stretch of rocky riverbed. Zhou Kuei ordered several fires to be lit. Those in the inner circle huddled close to the flames for warmth. The refugees on the outside could only crouch behind stones, knees drawn to their chests. Chen Su found a boulder half as tall as a man and had Su Wanyang and Xiaoman settle down on its lee side. It blocked the wind and kept them out of plain sight. Worn out, Xiaoman leaned against Su Wanyang and soon drifted off to sleep. Chen Su sat on the outer side, leaning against the rock, and mentally opened his system backpack. White steam buns times 998, water skin times 998, fever-reducing medicine times 1 pack, dried meat times half a gene, coarse cloth quilt times 1, fire starter times 1, coarse pottery jar times 1, hemp rope times 1 bundle, firewood knife times 1, beast repellent powder times 1 pack. All 10 slots were full. Chen Su frowned faintly. He could not take out the quilt now. In the ruined temple the previous night, he could have claimed he had found it. If he pulled it out here, everyone in the party would see it. He would have to make do for the night. He opened his eyes and glanced at the tattered bundle beside him, which held only a few buns and water skins. After a moment's thought, he set the bundle in a conspicuous spot, 2 steps away from himself, neither too close nor too far. Then he retrieved the hemp rope from his system backpack. He tied one into a protrusion at the base of the large boulder, stretched it flat along the ground, and fastened the other behind a low rock directly in front of the bundle. Next, he took out the beast repellent powder. He scattered a layer along the rope. The powder burned sharply to the nose, so he covered it with dry earth. Once finished, he returned to sit beside the boulder. He leaned close to Su Wanyang's ear and whispered, No matter what noises you hear tonight, cover Xiaoman's ears. Su Wanyang stiffened, nodded, and held Xiaoman tightly in her arms. Deep into the night, all campfires had burned down to faint embers. Wind howled across the rocky riverbed. Zhao Laosan crept over from the outer perimeter, keeping his eyes fixed on Chen Su's position. He had lost 2 teeth to the slap earlier, publicly humiliated. Hatred gnawed at him. Why? Why did Chen Su, a useless fellow, get to be among the inner circle? Why did he have broth to eat, water to drink, a woman and a child beside him? That bundle must hold grain. It had to. Zhao Laosan gripped his rusty firewood knife, his eyes blazing with malice. He had made up his mind. Sneak over, kill Chun Su with one blow, grab the bundle, and run. In the pitch-black night, by the time Zhou Kuei noticed, he would be long gone. He moved softly. 1 step, 2 steps. The tattered bundle was right before him. His mind fixed entirely on the bundle. He paid no heed to the ground. As his right foot advanced, his ankle slammed hard against the taut hemp rope. Ouch! He lost his balance and pitched forward face first. Thud! He crashed into the dirt. Clouds of beast repellent billowed up, sharp fumes stinging his nostrils. Ah! Zhao Laosan screamed, tears and mucus flooding his face. His cry was cut short. The moment he fell, Chun Su was on his feet, moving without hesitation. In 2 strides he was there, planting a boot on Zhao Laosan's chest to pin him down. His left hand clamped over the man's mouth, his right drawing his waist-hung firewood knife. Zhao Laosan's eyes streamed, his face slick with tears and snot, as he scrabbled wildly at the earth. Chun Su's stare was ice-cold. With men like this, no survivors could be left. In these times, mercy only dug your own grave. Chun Su twisted his wrist and pressed the blade against Zhao Laosan's throat. He drew it across. Squelch! Warm blood spurted onto the back of Chun Su's hand. Zhao Laosan's body convulsed violently. His hands clutched at Chun Su's trouser legs, gurgling sounds escaping his throat. Chun Su did not let go. His left hand stayed pressed over the mouth, his knee bearing down on the chest. After a dozen breaths, Zhao Laosan's hands loosened. He went limp and lay still. Chun Su released him, wiped the blood from his hand on Zhao Laosan's ragged clothes, cleaned the knife, and sheathed it at his waist. He untied the hemp rope and stowed it back in his system backpack. The beast repellent powder was now mixed with blood and soil, its traces erased. Dawn broke. Dead man. Zhao Laosan is dead. A shriek roused the entire group. Zhou Kuei strode over with his blade in hand. Zhao Laosan lay among the rocks, a deep gash across his neck, blood pooled beneath his stiff corpse. The refugees shrank back in terror. Who did this? That's brutal. I heard nothing last night. Zhou Kuei studied the clean, fatal wound. He lifted his head and looked straight toward Chun Su. Chun Su sat on the boulder, drinking from a water skin, calm and uninterested in the commotion. Zhou Kuei looked away and slung his heavy broadsword over one shoulder. He knew exactly what kind of man Zhao Laosan had been. A thief, a troublemaker, a robber. His death made the group safer. Chun Su could kill wolves, guide them, and was ruthless when needed. Zhou Kuei knew well who was more valuable. Stop your yowling. Zhou Kuei roared. Dig a grave and bury him. Gather your things, we march. The refugees dared not protest and set to work. With Zhao Laosan gone, the group grew noticeably quieter. They followed the dry riverbed all morning. Past midday, the riverbed curved. A ruined village came into view. Blackwater Village. The refugees erupted. Some scrambled forward on all fours. A village. There is a village. There might be water. Hurry, search for food. Hold your ground. Zhou Kuei shouted, halting them. The village was unnervingly quiet. No smoke, no barking dogs in broad daylight. The earthen gate wall had partly collapsed. Several thatched roofs were gaping with holes. Wind whistled through the empty buildings. The stillness sent chills down spines. One of his trusted men swallowed hard. Boss, something feels wrong. It's a ghost village. Zhou Kuei tightened his grip on his great sword. Send 2 men to scout. Everyone else stays put. No one moves without my order. Ignoring Zhou Kuei's arrangements, Chun Su slung his bundle and strode for the village entrance. A weathered stone stele stood there, carved with the characters Blackwater, worn almost smooth by wind and sand. Chun Su halted beside it. A mechanical voice echoed in his mind. New location detected. Blackwater Village Gate Stele. Sign in. Joy stirred in Chun Su. At last, a sign-in spot. Sign in. Sign in successful. Blackwater Village Gate Stele. Reward. Herbal medicine pack ×1. System backpack full. A dusty cloth pack materialized in his palm. He covered it quickly with his sleeve, his heart sinking. His backpack was full. More sign-in points lay ahead. He needed to free up space. Glancing around to make sure no one watched, he opened his bundle. He tucked the fire starter, fever-reducing medicine, and herbal pack deep inside, and slipped the beast-repellent powder inside his garment. 3 slots in his system backpack emptied. He raised his eyes toward the village entrance, where stood an abandoned wooden watchtower. Its timber had turned black, several rungs broken, yet the main structure remained sound. Chun Su walked over and tested the wooden posts. It could still bear weight. Stepping on the broken crossbeams, he climbed swiftly to the top platform. The square wooden platform offered an unobstructed view over most of the village. Broken pottery pots and tattered cloth littered the ground. No corpses lay about. There was barely any sign of looting. Chen Su frowned. The mechanical voice interrupted his thoughts. New location detected. Abandoned watchtower. Sign in. Sign in. Chen Su answered without hesitation. Sign in successful. Abandoned watchtower. Reward. Fine steel wrist crossbow ×1 set 10 bolts included. Stored in system backpack. A fine prize. Chen Su's eyes brightened. His firewood knife only worked in close combat. Against large numbers of foes, he would be at a disadvantage. This ranged weapon greatly boosted his chances of survival. He retrieved the wrist crossbow from his backpack. Exquisitely forged from fine steel, it had tanned cowhide binding straps. The finger-length bolts bore blood grooves and sharpened heads. Chen Su strapped it to his left forearm and covered it with his ragged sleeve. The trigger rested at his wrist. A simple bend of the arm would fire it. He bent his wrist. Click. The mechanism cocked. Satisfied, he climbed back down. As soon as he landed, Su Wanyang hurried over. She grabbed his arm and lowered her voice. Why are you wandering off? This village feels dangerous. Do not rush inside alone. What if something happens to you? Chen Su blinked at her hand on his arm. Su Wanyang flushed, quickly let go, and stepped back. I know what I am doing, Chen Su said, slipping his left hand behind his back to touch the crossbow mechanism. At that moment, the two scouts came running back. One gasped for breath. Boss, no one lives here. The other added urgently, no bodies on the outskirts, but there are wells. They hold water. At mention of water, the refugees lost all restraint. Water, truly water. Heaven be merciful. Zhou Kuei exhaled in relief and waved his arm. Enter the village. Draw water first, then set up camp. More than 100 people surged inward. Zhou Kuei and his core men marched at the front. Chen Su's small group stayed beside the broken cart. Narrow dirt lanes wound between crumbling earthen walls and thatched huts. The deeper they went, the heavier Chen Su's mood grew. Su Wanyang sensed it too. Holding Xiaoman tight, she whispered, there is water here. Why is it empty? Chen Su's gaze turned grim. Yes, in a famine, a place with water should not be deserted. Unless the inhabitants did not want to be found. The party reached an open square at the village center. A thunderous roar burst from the ruined houses on both sides. Kill! Men brandishing blades and clubs poured out from behind walls, rooftops, and broken doorways. Ragged-clad, ferocious-faced bandits. Chen Su's heart sank. This was no empty village. It was a bandit lair. No corpses because they had been cleared away. The wells were bait. They had waited for prey to walk straight into their trap. Panic erupted among the refugees. Bandits! Run! Help! Chaos reigned. Su Wanyang paled, pulled Xiaoman close, and ducked behind Chen Su. Chen Su let his left hand hang down, sleeve concealing the wrist crossbow. The trigger rested against his wrist bone. Refugees on the outer edge turned and fled, shoving and trampling one another amid screams and wails. The bandits struck indiscriminately, cutting down anyone in their path. Blood sprayed, cries of agony rent the air. Hold the line, grab your weapons, and stand firm. Zhou Kuei's eyes blazed red as he roared. He charged forward with his heavy broadsword. A bandit swung at him. Zhou Kuei parried, kicked the man hard in the stomach, and then struck him down. Blood splattered over him. Zhou Kuei's confidants drew their weapons and clashed with the bandits. Yet the bandits outnumbered them, 40 to 50 strong, armed with sabers, cudgels, and even 2 military swords. Chen Su shoved Su Wanyang and Xiaoman behind the broken cart. He scanned the battlefield. Complete chaos. His hand moved inside his sleeve. With a thought, his firewood knife materialized in his grip, and he pressed it into Su Wanyang's hands. Su Wanyang stiffened at the sudden weight of the hilt. The knife had appeared out of nowhere, but shouts of battle crashed all around them. She asked no questions, only gripped the hilt tightly. Chen Su spoke rapidly in a low voice. Take this. If anyone reaches for Xiaoman, cut their hand. You do not need to kill. It will scare them off. Su Wanyang's hands trembled, yet she did not let go. She pulled Xiaoman against her chest and held the knife before her, blade outward. I understand. Chen Su drew his own firewood knife and crouched beside the front of the cart. His wounds had not fully healed. To engage these desperate men head-on would be suicide. Ahead, Zhou Kuei was surrounded by 5 bandits. They fought in coordination, striking high and sweeping low. Zhou Kuei parried furiously, his great sword whirring. Slish! A bandit sliced him across the waist from the side. Blood seeped through his leather armor. Zhou Kuei grunted and staggered. Boss! His men wanted to go to him, yet each was locked in combat. A one-eyed bandit circled around, raising his long blade to strike Zhou Kuei at the nape of the neck. Chen Su did not hesitate. Crouched behind the cart, He lifted his left arm and aimed at the one-eyed bandit. He bent his wrist. Whoosh! A thin streak cut through the air. Thunk! The steel bolt pierced the bandit's side neck, punching clean through to the other side. The blade froze midair. Gurgling sounds escaped the man's throat as blood poured from his mouth and wound. He crumpled to the ground. Zhou Kuei survived the blow. He tried to glance back, but more bandits pressed him, leaving him no time. He roared and forced his attackers back. From behind the cart, Chun Su flexed his wrist twice more. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 more bolts flew. One buried itself in the back of a bandit sneaking up on one of Zhou Kuei's men. The man fell and twitched still. The second struck a bandit charging forward with a sharpened wooden stake, square in the face. He toppled backward. 3 bolts, 3 dead. Swift and merciless. Chun Su exhaled. He mentally stowed the crossbow and summoned a fresh, fully loaded set onto his left forearm. Unlimited ammunition. The bandits finally realized what was happening. Hidden weapon. Over there. Behind the cart, one shouted, pointing toward Chun Su. 7 or 8 bandits turned and charged the cart. Chun Su stepped out from behind cover, raising his left hand. 3 times he bent his wrist. Whoosh! 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 The 3 leading bandits fell, 1 shot through the throat, 1 through the chest, 1 through the left eye. All killed instantly. Their bodies crashed into the dirt. The bandits behind them skidded to a halt, colliding into one another. Dangerous foe. Leader. That man is deadly, someone yelled. Zhou Kuei caught his breath. Blood stained his leather armor dark red on his back. He glimpsed the fallen bandits, each pierced by a bolt to the head or neck, and his heart turned cold. Without pausing, he cut down another approaching foe. Make way. Get out of my path. A thunderous shout came from the rear of the bandit ranks. A towering brute stepped forward, broad-shouldered, with a full beard. He carried a 9-ring broadsword, iron rings clattering as he walked. He grabbed a retreating underling, lifted him like a chicken, and hurled him forward as a living shield. What are you afraid of? It is only one man. The bandit chief advanced in erratic zigzags, using his subordinates for cover. Chun Su fired 2 bolts. Clang! Clang! The heavy sword deflected both shots, sending sparks flying as the bolts ricocheted away. They closed to 5 paces apart. The bandit chief bared yellow teeth in a grin. He gripped his great sword with both hands and lifted it high, iron rings rattling. Die! The blade crashed down, carrying brutal force. Chun Su met it with his firewood knife. Clang! A teeth-jarring crash of metal. Pain shot up Chun Su's arm. His wrist throbbed. A deep notch bit into his knife, bending the blade. The bandit chief laughed at the damaged weapon. Ha ha! Your knife is broken. What will you fight with now? He pulled back his sword and swept it horizontally toward Chun Su's waist. As the blade came in, Chun Su mentally stowed his ruined knife and summoned a brand new sharp firewood knife into his grasp in the blink of an eye. The sweeping blade whistled toward him. Chun Su dropped low, the edge slicing past his scalp and shearing off several strands of hair. He gripped his new knife with both hands and surged upward, slashing from below into the bandit chief's unprotected abdomen. Rip! Blade cut through cloth and flesh. A gash half a foot long split the man's belly, blood and intestines spilled out. The chief's laugh died on his face. He stared down at his own wound, stunned. Your knife? Chun Su gave him no chance to finish. He pulled his blade free and struck again, hacking at the man's neck. Crack! The huge head flew off and rolled across the ground. The headless corpse swayed and collapsed heavily. Silence fell over the battlefield. The second leader is dead? Run! When the bandits watched their second-in-command get slain with a single blow, terror clutched their hearts. They scrambled and fled madly out of the village. Zhou Kuei led his men to cut down several of the fleeing outlaws, while the rest managed to escape. Corpses and blood covered the open ground. Chun Su stood beside the headless body of the bandit leader and shook the blood off his woodcutter's blade. The wound on his left leg had split open once more. Blood trickled down his trouser leg and dripped onto the earth. Clutching the knife wound on his back, Zhou Kuei limped over. The 2 men locked eyes. Zhou Kuei took a deep breath, planted his broad-backed great sword on the ground, and folded his fists in salute. Chun Su, you saved my life today. From now on within this group, your word is my word. Anyone who dares to object. He patted the blade slung over his shoulder. They can answer to this. None of the trusted corps subordinates dared to raise any dissent as they watched. Su Wanyang crawled out from under the wooden cart and stood up, holding Xiao Man in her arms. Xiao Man rested her head on her shoulder, peeking at the blood-soaked Chun Su through her fingers, her big eyes blinking constantly. Father, have all the bad men run away? They're all gone. Chun Su smiled and reached out to ruffle her hair. Su Wanyang stared at the man standing amid pools of blood. Blood matted his hair into tangled clumps. Mud and blood streaked his face, and his clothes were tattered beyond repair. Yet he stood firm there. Su Wanyang could not put her feelings into words. She knew one thing for certain. From this moment forward, no one in the group would dare bully her and Xiaoman again. Chun Su slid his woodcutter's knife back into his waistband and swept his gaze over the chaotic scene. Set up camp first. He looked toward Zhou Kuei, his tone calm. We'll need everyone to search the village for whatever the bandits left behind. Chun Su settled Su Wanyang and Xiaoman behind the broken wooden cart. Stay right here. Do not go anywhere. He lowered his voice, glancing at the disorderly crowd nearby. Zhou Kuei's men will clear the battlefield. If anyone approaches you without good reason, do not hesitate to defend yourselves. Su Wanyang still gripped the woodcutter's knife Chun Su had given her, her palms slick with sweat. She looked at Chun Su's blood-streaked face, oddly serene, and nodded firmly. Be careful. Chun Su hummed in acknowledgement and turned, heading toward the rear courtyard the bandits had occupied. Most of the bandits had fled in the earlier fight. Those who remained lay dead on the ground. These outlaws had occupied Heishui village for who knew how long, and they must have plundered countless supplies. Zhou Kuei's men rummaged through the corpses up ahead, grabbing swords, coins, and clothing. Chun Su had no interest in competing with them. What he needed most were items to conceal his stockpiles. The system backpack was useful enough, yet it only held 10 slots, far too little space. Chun Su walked through a half-collapsed moon gate and entered the rear courtyard. Weeds ran wild throughout the yard, and several cracked clay jars were piled in the corner. Beneath the eaves of a side chamber rested a wooden wheelbarrow. Chun Su's eyes lit up. It was built from hard timber, its wheels wrapped in iron plating. Blade scars marked the wooden bed, but the cart itself remained intact. He stepped forward, grasped the handles, lifted it, and pushed it a short distance. Creak. The wheels turned smoothly. Chun Su patted the handles. You'll do. He wheeled the cart into a hidden corner and checked his surroundings to make sure no one had followed. With a thought, he opened his system backpack. First, he pulled out the thick cotton quilt and tossed it onto the cart. It took up far too much storage space and drew unwanted attention if brought out casually. The cart would serve as a perfect base to lay it on. Next, he took out the clay jars and hemp rope, stacking them beside the quilt. Then he retrieved his herb pouch, fever medicine, flint, and steel from inside his clothes, wrapped the old military map in rags, and stowed everything inside one of the clay jars. Once finished, Chun Su glanced at the gray interface in his mind. Steamed wheat buns times 998 water skin times 998 dried, meat times 0.5 jinshin, so let out a slow breath. 7 empty slots were now free, enough for him to collect plenty of supplies within Heishui village. He pushed the wheelbarrow slowly back to the open front yard. Zhou Kuei was directing his men to drag the bandit corpses outside the village. The blood on the ground had yet to dry, and the stench rose thick under the sun. Seeing Chun Su return with the wheelbarrow, Zhou Kuei hurried over. A stiff smile tugged at his coarse features, and his tone was far more deferential than before. Brother Chun, where did you find such a fine cart? Chun Su tapped the handles. Found it in the rear courtyard, still serviceable. He glanced at the bodies scattered across the ground and asked, What have you recovered? Zhou Kuei cursed under his breath. These beggars only carried a few scraps of silver between them, less than 10 taels total. We did dig up more than 100 jin of mixed grain in the cellar, plus a few air-dried pheasants. At that, Zhou Kuei turned to Chun Su. Brother Chun, you saved all our lives. You get first pick of the grain. The several trusted subordinates nearby said nothing. Everyone could see how much standing Chun Su now held. But Chun Su merely waved his hand. You handle distributing the grain. Zhou Kuei stared in surprise. Chun Su spoke steadily. We've just fought a battle. We cannot let discord break out. You know better than me how to divide supplies as the group leader. Zhou Kuei's eyes shifted. Those words gave him all the respect he was due. Once you've sorted it, send our share to my steward. Chun Su glanced toward Su Wanyang behind the broken cart. She will manage all household matters for us from now on. Su Wanyang held Xiaoman in her arms. She froze when she heard him. His household steward? She instinctively lifted her gaze toward Chun Su. Chun Su's expression remained calm, as if he had merely made an offhand comment. Yet Su Wanyang's ears slowly flushed red. She lowered her head, twisting the hem of her garment between her fingers. She said nothing, yet her heart gave a soft throb. Zhou Kuei looked from Su Wanyang back to Chun Su and broke into a grin. Understood. I have full trust in sister-in-law handling this. Chun Su glanced down at himself. His linen clothes were torn to shreds, crusted with dried black blood that clung to his wounds, stinging and itching relentlessly. Also, send someone to fetch clean clothes for me. I cannot wear these rags any longer. Zhou nodded at once. Easy enough. The bandits must have left clothes in their quarters. I'll send men to get them straight away. Chunsu said no more and walked deeper into the village. The old locust tree had long since been stripped of its bark, its trunk scored with countless axe and blade marks. Chunsu stepped beneath the tree, his feet resting on its cracked roots. A new location detected. Under the withered locust tree at the village entrance. Check in now? A faint smile tugged at Chunsu's lips. Check in. Check in successful. Under the withered locust tree at the village entrance. Reward. 1 jar of refined salt stored automatically in system backpack. Refined salt? Chunsu's eyes brightened. Shielded by the tree trunk, he focused his thoughts, and a palm-sized clay jar appeared in his hand. He twisted off the lid. Fine. White salt grains filled the container. Chunsu quickly closed the lid and returned it to his backpack. Salt was far more valuable than silver. A pinch of it could mean the difference between life and death in desperate times. Satisfied, Chunsu turned toward the half-collapsed earthen wall where the bandits had previously hidden. As soon as he stepped behind the wall, a new location detected. Behind the collapsed earthen wall. Check in now? Check in. Check in successful. Behind the collapsed earthen wall. Reward. 1 iron wok stored automatically in system backpack. Chunsu blinked. An iron wok. He summoned it out. A heavy black double-handled iron wok thudded onto the ground. Clang. The noise carried. Chunsu immediately looked over his shoulder. Fortunately, chaos still reigned in the front yard, and no one noticed the sound. He knelt and ran a hand along the rim. It weighed easily more than 10 jin. A precious find. Still, it would waste valuable backpack storage space. Instead of moving it immediately, he dragged the wok into the shade of the ruined wall and covered it with dry grass. He would retrieve it later to avoid drawing attention with constant trips back and forth. Chunsu brushed dust from his hands and continued walking into the village. Abandoned by the bandits, a broken wooden cart leaned crookedly beside the path not far away. Its axle had snapped, and dried blood dotted its planks. As Chunsu approached, a new location detected. Beside the discarded wooden cart. Check in now? Check in. Check in successful. Beside the discarded wooden cart. Reward. 1 pair of layered cloth-soled shoes stored automatically in system backpack. Shoes? Chunsu glanced at the tattered straw sandals on his own feet. His toes poked through the gaps, and blisters covered the soles of his feet. These shoes could not have come at a better time. He was about to take them out to change into them when he thought of Su Wanyang's footwear. Her shoes were split along the upper, the heels crushed flat from constant wear. And Xiaoman. The little girl's shoes gaped open at the toe, forcing her to curl her toes inward as she walked. Chunsu fell silent. 1 pair would not be nearly enough. He found cover behind the broken cart and summoned the layered cloth-soled shoes. Thick soles, tight stitching, they looked incredibly durable. He set 1 shoe on the ground and held the other in his grasp, then sent the held shoe back into the backpack. In the next instant, the backpack slot lit up again. Layered cloth-soled shoes times 1 pair. A faint smirk crossed Chunsu's face. He was growing more adept at exploiting this quirk of the system. He pulled out the newly generated pair, then repeated the trick once more. Soon 3 pairs of cloth-soled shoes lay on the ground. 1 for himself, 1 for Su Wanyang. The third would be too large for Xiaoman, but stuffed with rags and dried grass. It would still be far better than letting her walk bare-toed. Chunsu wrapped 2 pairs in scrap cloth and tucked them inside his clothes. Only then did he slip on his own new shoes. They fit perfectly. The thick soles felt firm yet soft beneath his feet, vastly superior to worn straw sandals. He kicked his old straw sandals under the discarded cart and ventured deeper into the village. No further check-in points appeared along the way. Soon he reached the largest thatched house in the settlement. Several stone steps led up to the doorway, stained with dried blood. The moment Chunsu stepped onto the stonework, a new location detected. Steps of the assembly hall. Check-in now? Check-in. Check-in successful. Steps of the assembly hall. Reward. 1 gunpowder packet stored automatically in system backpack. Chunsu halted. Gunpowder? This was a strategic resource. Used wisely, it could save his life. Handled carelessly, it could destroy him and his family. He raised his eyes toward the large thatched building. A rough wooden plank hung above the door, marked with 3 crudely charred characters, Assembly Hall. Chunsu narrowed his eyes. How pretentious of these bandits. Murderous plunderers had no right to claim an assembly hall. He climbed the steps and pushed against the wooden door. Creak. A heavy stench of sweat and stale wine filled the assembly hall. Shattered wine jars and gnawed bones littered the floor. As soon as Chunsu crossed the threshold, the system prompt echoed in his mind. A new location detected. Inside the assembly hall doorway, check-in now? Chunsu did not pause. Check-in. Check-in successful. Inside the assembly hall doorway, reward. 1 vial of awakening pills stored automatically in system backpack. Chunsu walked straight to the center of the room. A broad wooden chair stood there, carved with rough beast patterns and draped with a filthy tiger pelt. He stopped beside the tiger pelt chair. A new location detected. Beside the tiger pelt chair, check-in now? Check-in. Check-in successful. Beside the tiger pelt chair, reward. 1 fine iron dagger. Chunsu summoned the dagger and hid it in his sleeve to examine it. The whole blade and sheath measured less than a foot long. When he drew it slightly, cold light glinted along the edge. A superb weapon, far handier than the woodcutter's knife at his waist. It was ill-suited for open combat, yet perfect for close-quarters self-defense and surprise strikes. He tucked the dagger against his lower back and covered it with his torn tunic. Chunsu walked past the tiger pelt chair toward the assembly hall's rear door and pushed it open, revealing a small courtyard. Weeds grew waist-high, and a large water tank covered with a blackened wooden board stood in the corner. Chunsu stepped up to the tank and laid a hand on the board covering it. A new location detected. Beside the rear courtyard water tank, check-in now? Chunsu drew a deep breath and spoke silently in his mind. Check-in. Check-in successful. Beside the rear courtyard water tank, reward. 1 gene of polished white rice. Immediately afterward, the cold mechanical voice in his head shifted tone. Host has completed 20 check-ins in total. System backpack expansion triggered. Storage slots increased, +5. Current total backpack slots, 15. Chunsu closed his eyes and focused on the gray interface within his mind. The original 2 rows of 10 slots now had a 3rd row of empty spaces beneath them. 5 extra slots. 15 storage spaces in all. Chunsu stared at the blank new slots, his breathing quickening. Every extra slot meant greater odds of survival for him, Su Wanyang and Xiao Man. He quickly began to wonder. 20 check-ins unlocked extra space. What would happen at 30? Or 50? Would more slots open? Would new system functions unlock? As for the polished white rice he had just received, it was the finest grain imaginable. Within this group, men would fight to the death just for chaff. A single gene of white rice would drive starving men mad if displayed openly. What was more, if he found a chance to replicate supplies using the backpack quirk, he could gather 50 or 100 gene without difficulty. Chunsu secured the white rice in his backpack, his mood lifting. He turned to head back to the front yard to see how Zhou Kuei's cleanup was progressing. He had only taken a few steps when he froze. A faint sound drifted on the wind, like quiet weeping or muffled whimpering. It came from the far end of the rear courtyard. The faint smile faded from Chunsu's face. His hand drifted to his forearm, where the steel sleeve crossbow rested cold against his skin. He lightened his footsteps and followed the noise. Circling 2 half-collapsed woodsheds, he spotted a large building. All its windows had been boarded shut with thick planks, blocking every ray of daylight. Most striking was the heavy wooden door, secured by an iron lock the size of a man's fist. The whimpering leaked out through the crack beneath the door. Chunsu walked up to the doorway. A sickly stench washed over him, mixed odors of waste, sweat, and stagnant air trapped inside for untold days, enough to churn his stomach. He grasped the iron lock and tugged. It was heavy and sturdy. Is anyone inside? Chunsu asked in a low voice. The whimpering from within fell silent at once. After 2 heartbeats, rustling sounds emerged, as if figures were shrinking back toward the far wall. Footsteps echoed from outside the courtyard. Zhou Kuei approached with 2 trusted subordinates. He carried 2 rough linen garments and quickened his pace upon seeing Chunsu standing before the locked door. Brother Chun, I found some clothes. They're worn, but they'll serve. Zhou Kuei handed over the garments. Then his gaze fixed on the locked door. His eyes lit up. This room sealed so tightly. Could the bandits have hidden treasure inside? The 2 men behind him crowded closer. One swallowed hard, while the other rubbed his hands together and muttered quietly. That lock's bigger than my fist. There's bound to be valuables in there. Chunsu slung the clothes over one shoulder. Zhou Kuei leaned forward and sniffed through the door crack. His face turned green instantly. He stumbled backward, pinching his nose and cursing. Damn it! What reeks in here? Did the bandits turn this place into a latrine? The 2 subordinates coughed violently from the stench. Chunsu said nothing. He drew his woodcutter's knife, gripped the hilt firmly, and aimed the blade at the iron lock. Stand back. Zhou Kuei and the others hastily retreated. Chunsu inhaled deeply, twisted his torso, and brought the knife crashing down. Clang. Metal shrieked, and sparks sprayed outward. Half the lock staple snapped. The edge of Chunsu's woodcutter's knife suffered a deep notch. His expression did not shift. A subtle flick of his wrist moved the knife briefly into the backpack, repairing it in an instant before it returned to his grasp. The three men only saw his hand twitch, unaware the blade had been restored to a sharp new edge. Chinsu raised the knife once more. Another heavy blow landed. Crack! The staple broke cleanly. The iron lock clattered onto the ground, kicking up dust. Chinsu sheathed his knife and kicked the wooden door hard. Bang! The heavy door swung inward. A wave of overwhelming foul air surged out. Zhou Kuei and his men stumbled backward, overwhelmed by the smell. One man doubled over, retching as if he would throw up everything he had eaten that day. Dimness filled the room. Only the narrow shaft of sunlight from the doorway illuminated a patch of filthy earthen floor. Chinsu stood in the entrance and squinted for several breaths. When his eyes adjusted enough to make out the scene inside, his gaze turned icy cold. The chamber was spacious yet bare, without a single bed. Moldy hay covered the ground, saturated with moisture and waste. The combined stench hung thick in the air. Huddled together in the far corner were clusters of shadowy figures, more than a dozen young girls. They pressed tightly against one another like frightened quails. The oldest appeared no more than 17 or 18, the youngest merely 13 or 14 years of age. Their clothes were tattered rags. Some wore nothing but grimy sacks. Bruises and scabs covered every visible arm and leg. The youngest children crammed themselves against the wall, trying to vanish into the cracks. A slightly older girl, her face smudged with charcoal, shakily stepped forward half a pace. She spread her arms to shield the younger girls behind her. Though she trembled uncontrollably with fear, she stared fixedly at Chinsu and Zhou Kuei. "Stay back." Her lips were bitten raw, her voice hoarse. "I beg you, do not come closer." When Zhou Kuei saw the state of the captives, his expression darkened. He was a hardened man who had seen much bloodshed, yet this sight stoked blazing anger in his chest. These beasts! Zhou Kuei slammed his fist against the doorframe, sending clouds of dust showering down. "Damn it! I shouldn't have let those bastards die so quickly. I should have flayed them inch by inch." Chinsu stood in the doorway and glanced around the room at the young girls. When his gaze fell on the youngest few, his fingers, which had been resting on the trigger of his sleeve crossbow, slowly relaxed. In these times, human life was cheap. Yet some acts were simply inhuman. "Stop crying." Chinsu spoke in a quiet voice, but it cut through the weeping filling the room. The leading girl shuddered violently. The next moment, she dropped to her knees with a thud, slamming her forehead hard against the dirt floor. "Sir, please show mercy. Spare these younger sisters. They're still children. They can't endure more suffering. Do whatever you want to me. I'll do anything. Please." As she kowtowed repeatedly, she tugged at her tattered linen garment. Chinsu frowned and stepped forward. The girl squeezed her eyes shut in terror, trembling even harder. Instead, a bundle of cloth landed on her head. She froze. Chinsu tossed two coarse cloth garments off his shoulders toward her. "Get dressed. You're safe now." The girl remained stiff for a long moment before pulling the clothes off her head. She stared blankly at the garments in her hands, not daring to move. Chinsu stayed in the doorway, refusing to step further inside. "The bandits who terrorized the village are either dead or on the run. You're free." Silence swept over the room. A dozen young girls stared wide-eyed at Chinsu, as if they could not comprehend his words. The bandits were dead? That ruthless monster was dead too? The leading girl's throat bobbed, her voice shaking. "Truly, truly?" Zhou Kuei shouted from behind Chinsu. "Why would we lie to you? The ground outside is covered in corpses, their blood still fresh. If we hadn't stepped in, you'd still be trapped in this hellhole." The moment his words landed, someone in the room could hold back no longer. "Wah!" One girl burst into tears first. Right after, the dozen girls huddled together, their sobs uncontrollable. Their cries held fear, grief, and the numb bewilderment of surviving certain death. Chinsu's head ached at the sound. He was no good at comforting others, and he had no wish to stand here watching a room full of people weep. He turned toward Zhou Kuei. "Fetch several women from the group. Boil hot water for them to wash up. Find more clothes to cover them. They can't go out looking like this." Zhou Kuei nodded, ready to agree, then his expression turned grim. He stole a glance into the room and leaned in close to Chinsu, lowering his voice. "Brother Chun, we've rescued them. But that's 15 extra mouths to feed." Zhou Kuei kept his tone hushed. "Our group already struggles with food. The coarse grains we dug up from the cellar will barely keep everyone on thin gruel for a few days. How are we supposed to support 15 more people?" It was an unpleasant truth. Every additional person raised the risk of starvation. These 15 girls were barely able to stand right now. They could not perform heavy labor anytime soon. Keeping them with the group would be a genuine burden. Chinsu glanced back into the room. The girls were still crying. The leading girl had pulled on one of the coarse garments, yet remained on her knees. Instead of dressing herself with the other, she carefully draped it over the smallest girl behind her. Chinsu looked away. He still had nearly 1,000 white steamed buns stored in his system backpack. They could sustain this 100-person group for days, let alone 15 girls. He needed to come up with a plan. After a short silence, Chinsu said, "We take them with us." Zhou looked at him. Chinsu spoke steadily. "They cannot do heavy work now, but that does not mean they are useless. They can learn to tend fires, cook, mend clothes, and care for the wounded. The group has plenty of able-bodied men. What we lack are people to handle chores." Zhou did not reply immediately. Chinsu continued, "They won't receive rations equal to the working men. Half a bowl of thin gruel each day, enough to keep them alive. When we reach the southern lands where there is hope, they can seek their own way forward." Zhou stroked his chin and thought it over. If they abandoned the girls in Heishui village, they would either starve within 2 days or be recaptured by any fleeing bandits. Zhou gritted his teeth. "Fine. You rescued them, so we'll do it your way." He spun around and roared outside. "Some women, get over here. Boil water and gather clothes. Hurry up, don't dawdle." After shouting, Zhou faced Chinsu again. "Brother Chun, I'll be frank. I can bring them along, but food will be strictly rationed. If any of these 15 cause trouble, I won't go easy on them." Chinsu nodded. "Enforce the rules as you see fit." He paused and added another sentence. "But anyone who tries to take advantage of them will face the group's punishment as well." Zhou blinked, then broke into a grin. "Understood. Rest assured, if anyone dares to act out of line, I'll deal with them." Inside the room, the leading girl trembled sharply upon hearing this. She lifted her head and looked toward Chinsu in the doorway. Fear still lingered in her eyes, but a faint glimmer of hope had appeared. Chinsu stood watching the girls slowly calm their weeping. The leading girl had given both pieces of clothing Chinsu tossed inside to the 2 youngest children. She herself remained wrapped in a tattered sackcloth, her shoulders thin as dry firewood. A while later, she mustered up the courage to walk over to Chinsu. Once again, she dropped to her knees heavily. "Benefactor, my name is Xiaoer." The girl knocked her forehead against the filthy dirt, her voice hoarse. "We can never repay your kindness. From now on, my life belongs to you. Tell me to do anything, and I will obey." Chinsu did not help her up. In this world, kneeling meant nothing. Staying alive was what mattered. "Stand up," Chinsu said flatly. "I have no need for servants. Women will bring you water and clothes shortly. Clean yourselves and head to the front courtyard." Xiaoer froze, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Chinsu turned and left without another glance. These 15 girls were truly pitiful. Yet every extra mouth meant extra supplies consumed. Taking them in could be an act of mercy, but failing to support them would drag everyone toward death. Fortunately, he possessed the system. Saving these girls was well within his power. He simply needed to devise a proper arrangement. Chinsu walked back to the wooden cart. Su Wanyang peered anxiously toward the backyard. When she saw him return unharmed, she let out a quiet breath of relief. Xiaoman sat on the cart, clutching the water skin in her arms, quiet as a kitten. "Where did you go?" "I saw Captain Zhou rush men toward the backyard." Su Wanyang lowered her voice and asked. Chinsu unfastened the hatchet at his waist and tossed it onto the cart. "Bandits were holding more than a dozen captured girls captive in the woodshed out back. We just freed them. Zhou has gone to send clothes over." Su Wanyang went rigid. As a woman, she knew all too well what fate awaited females captured by bandits. She bit her lip, sympathy welling up in her eyes. Such cruelty. Those murderous villains. Su Wanyang cursed quietly, then rummaged inside her tattered bundle. Aside from a few steamed buns Chinsu had given her, it held only 2 worn inner garments she used for changing. The clothes were ragged, yet washed clean. She picked them up and looked at Chinsu, hesitating to speak. Chinsu instantly guessed what she wanted. "Go ahead and give them away if you wish." Chinsu warned her, "But do not be blindly charitable. Hand over the clothes, yet do not grow too close to them. There are far too many suffering people in this era. You cannot save every one of them." Su Wanyang nodded. "I understand." She took the clothes and headed for the backyard. Chinsu leaned against the cart and closed his eyes to plan. The bandits occupying Heishui village had been eliminated. The village had wells and houses. The group would definitely camp here for the night. To everyone else, this was a rare safe resting spot. To Chinsu, it was an unfinished location to explore. He glanced toward the dilapidated houses deeper within the village. He needed to search them thoroughly tonight. It would be foolish not to. Shortly afterward, Su Wanyang came back. Her eyes were red. She had witnessed the terrible state of the young girls. Did you give them the clothes? Shinsu asked. I did. Su Wanyang sighed. Their bodies are covered in wounds. Shinsu said nothing and let out a deep sigh. Daylight gradually faded. Zhou Kuei refused to let everyone stay crowded on the open ground. The village had existing houses. Though run down, they at least blocked the wind. He led several trusted men to search every building. Only after confirming there were no hidden bandits or corpses did he assign housing. Core members of the group occupied the center of the village. The refugee families settled further out. The more than 100 jin of coarse grains found in the bandit cellar were divided among everyone by Zhou Kuei. Each household received a small portion. Not enough to fill bellies, merely enough to sustain life. Shinsu's small family was allocated a small courtyard beside a well. The courtyard gate hung crookedly. Half the earthen wall had crumbled, and several holes pierced the roof. Still, it had an earthen stove inside, and a half-standing wall offered some privacy in the backyard. By current standards, this was excellent accommodation. Su Wanyang laid Xiaoman down on a relatively clean wooden board inside the room and spread out their quilt. Xiaoman lay on top and squinted happily. Mother, it's soft. Su Wanyang stroked her little face. I will cook porridge for you soon. Chun-Su pushed the wooden cart into the courtyard and set both hatchets in the corner of the room. Su Wanyang glanced at the two nearly identical hatchets, but said nothing. Chun-Su placed a rough clay pot on the earthen stove and added dry twigs collected from the yard. The coarse grains distributed by Zhou Kuei held plenty of sand and chaff. Su Wanyang sat by the stove, carefully picking out impurities. She worked meticulously. In these harsh times, no single grain could be wasted. Chun-Su looked toward the backyard. I'm going to check the rear yard for usable supplies. Su Wanyang lifted her head. Don't wander far. I won't leave the courtyard. Chun-Su replied, grabbed his water skin, and walked into the backyard. Tall weeds grew waist high. A broken pottery jar stood in the corner next to a half-collapsed chicken coop. Chun-Su approached the jar. New location detected. Courtyard broken jar, check in now? Chun-Su's eyes brightened slightly. Check in. Check. In at courtyard broken jar, successful reward. Soapberry powder ×1 packet stored in system backpack. Soapberry powder. Perfect timing. Chun-Su sniffed his own clothes. The stench of blood, sweat, mud, and medicine mingled together. Even he could barely stand it. Never mind Su Wanyang. He walked over to the ruined chicken coop. New location detected. Collapsed chicken coop, check in now? Check in. Check. In at collapsed chicken coop, successful reward. Chicken eggs ×6 stored in system backpack. Chun-Su raised an eyebrow. Valuable supplies. Xiaoman needed nourishment. He continued toward the far corner of the yard. A fractured millstone rested against the wall, half buried in soil. New location detected. Broken millstone, check in now? Check in. Check. In at broken millstone, successful reward. Small can of rapeseed oil ×1 stored in system backpack. Oil. In times of famine, oil was more precious than meat. Chun-Su's thoughts stirred. He had not wasted his time coming to Heishui village. He walked toward the gap in the courtyard wall and waited 2 breaths. No notification appeared. Chun-Su felt no disappointment. Discovering 3 check in spots was already a good gain. He glanced back into the room. Su Wanyang was still sorting grains. Xiaoman lay on the quilt, hugging her water skin and humming a tuneless little song. No one was watching the backyard. Chun-Su summoned a spare water skin and the soapberry powder from his backpack. Standing behind the damaged earthen wall, he stripped off his blood-caked linen tunic. The rough fabric had stuck fast to his wounds. When he pulled it free, sharp pain shot through his chest. Chun-Su gritted his teeth and peeled the garment away slowly. Crusted, dried blood tore open, and fresh, thin streaks of blood seeped from the edges of his injuries. His wounds on the chest and calf had not fully healed. Some areas had scabbed over, while others had turned pale from constant sweat. Chun-Su pulled out the wooden stopper of the water skin and poured water over himself. Cold water streamed down his skin, washing blood, dirt, and medicinal powder into the yellow earth at his feet. He closed his eyes. Ever since waking in the ruined temple, he had known nothing but hunger and constant fighting. Fighting wolves, fighting men, battling bandits. Every part of his body ached. But as the water washed over him, he finally felt less like a man dragged out from a pile of corpses. The water skin emptied. Using his mind, Chun-Su pulled a full replacement from his system backpack. He used the soapberry powder to scrub his hair and body, then rinsed repeatedly. He stopped only once the heavy smell of blood faded and cold water left his skin tingling. Chun-Su fetched a patched yet clean coarse tunic from the bundle on the cart and changed into it. He stared down at himself. At last, he looked like a normal person again. He rolled up his soiled clothes and empty water skins, tucked them beneath the broken jar to hide any trace, then walked back into the house. Porridge aroma already filled the room. Su Wanyang had added the coarse grains to the pot and stirred slowly with a wooden stick. The porridge inside was extremely thin, clear enough to see one's reflection. Chun-Su looked at Xiao Man, then at Su Wanyang tending the fire with her head lowered. Turning his back, he pulled half a steamed bun from his system backpack and crumbled it into the clay pot. Once white flour mixed into the hot soup, the watery porridge instantly thickened. After a moment's thought, he took out 2 eggs and cracked them into the pot. The egg whites and yolks swirled through the broth when they hit the heat. The delicious scent intensified at once. Xiao Man twitched her nose, her eyes lighting up. "Mother, it smells wonderful. Eat slowly." Su Wanyang's movements paused. She lifted her gaze toward Chun-Su. Chun-Su sat down with a calm expression. "Who knows what was mixed into the grain Zhou Kuei handed out? We can consider it a lucky find." Su Wanyang studied him for a long while without exposing his lie, then resumed stirring the porridge. After some time, the porridge finished cooking. Su Wanyang first filled a small bowl for Xiao Man, blowing on it repeatedly before feeding her. Xiao Man took a mouthful, and her eyes curved happily. "Mother, today's porridge is smooth and tasty." Chun-Su filled a bowl for himself. Warm porridge filled his stomach, spreading gentle heat. Even the pain in his chest and legs felt lighter. After eating, Xiao Man's spirits lifted. She lay on the quilt and stretched out her small hand to grab Chun-Su's sleeve. "Father, you chased all the bad men away today." Chun-Su smiled and pinched her little nose. "Were you scared, Xiao Man?" Xiao Man thought earnestly. "I was scared." Her voice turned soft, and she added, "But when father is here, I am not so afraid." Chun-Su's heart stirred softly. He whispered, "Father will always be here from now on." Xiao Man broke into a bright smile. Soon afterward, the little girl grew sleepy and could barely keep her eyes open. Su Wanyang lifted her onto the quilt and patted her back gently. Wind drifted through the cracks in the broken window. The flame inside the room was dim, casting flickering light across the earthen walls. Xiao Man fell asleep quickly. Chun-Su was about to stand up when Su Wanyang spoke softly. "Chun-Su." Her quiet voice halted his movement. Su Wanyang did not look at him immediately. She bent down, picked up the 2 hatchets, and placed them between them. She also set out the water skins, side by side on the ground. Su Wanyang's finger traced the crooked stitching on one side. The stitching sat in the exact same position, with identical uneven stitches, matching curves, as if made from the same mold. Su Wanyang raised her head and looked straight at Chun-Su. "This water skin." Chun-Su remained silent. Su Wanyang glanced toward the 2 hatchets. "And these hatchets?" Her voice stayed quiet, yet every word rang clear. "I saw your blade crack when you fought the bandit leader. But after you returned, the hatchet was whole again." Silence settled over the room. Only dry twigs under the clay pot occasionally crackled. All those steamed buns, medicine, the quilt, and the eggs that appeared in the pot today. Chun-Su's heart sank a little with each item she named. Su Wanyang kept her eyes fixed on him. "Chun-Su, how many secrets are you hiding?" The firelight wavered. Their shadows stretched across the earthen wall, close yet separated by an invisible divide. Chun-Su met Su Wanyang's gaze. This woman had noticed everything all along. She had simply chosen not to ask until now. Chun-Su fell silent for a moment and spoke quietly. "There are things I cannot tell you fully." Su Wanyang slowly tightened her fingers. Chun-Su continued, "But I swear I will never harm you or Xiao Man." Su Wanyang stared at him. After a long pause, she said softly, "I know." Those 3 words lifted a weight from Chun-Su's chest. He lowered his voice. "I can find things." Su Wanyang did not interrupt. Chun-Su chose his words carefully. "Things no one else can locate." As he finished speaking, he lifted his palm. A small sack of gleaming white rice materialized in his hand. Su Wanyang's breath caught. White rice. Not chaff, not coarse grain. Pure, polished white rice. Chun-Su set the sack on the ground. He scooped a handful of rice and poured it into a broken bowl. Then he stored the sack away. When he summoned it again, the sack was full once more. Su Wanyang's eyes widened bit by bit. Chun-Su poured out half the sack, stored it, summoned it again. Still full. Once, twice, 3 times. The pile of white rice inside the broken bowl grew higher. Su Wanyang stared at the mound of rice, her throat working, unable to utter a single word. She finally understood. Why the water skins never emptied. Why the steamed buns never ran out. Why broken hatchets became whole again. She also realized where Chun-Su found the confidence to keep her and Xiao Man alive through this famine. Chun-Su stopped. "Do you understand now?" Su Wanyang's voice trembled. "There's that much. More or less." Chun-Su said nothing about the system or transmigration. "I can get hold of certain things," he lowered his voice. As long as I have them in my possession, I can restore them to their original state. Su Wanyang stared down at the bowl of white rice. She fell silent for a long time. When she lifted her head again, her complexion had paled. Who else knows about this? Only you. Chin-su met her gaze. And it must stay that way. Su Wanyang's fingers trembled slightly. She understood better than anyone how terrifying this secret was. Grain, water, medicine, blades. Any one of these was enough to drive people mad. Su Wanyang knelt down and gathered the scattered rice back into the bowl slowly and steadily. Don't bring these things out in front of others from now on. If you need to take anything out, tell me first. Chin-su raised an eyebrow. Aren't you afraid? Su Wanyang glanced up at him. I am afraid. She paused, then continued. But not of you. I fear something will happen to you. Chin-su froze. Su Wanyang pushed the bowl toward him, her voice soft. You said you would never abandon me and Xiao Man. I will trust you this once. Chin-su looked at her. The heavy weight settled in his chest seemed to lift a little. He murmured, not just once. Su Wanyang stared at him in confusion. Chin-su put the rice sack and bowl away, speaking earnestly. Trust me always from now on. Su Wanyang was stunned. The firelight washed over her face, and the tips of her ears gradually flushed red. She turned her head away, yet her tone remained stubborn. Let's make it through tonight first. Chin-su smiled faintly. He set the 2 hatchets back in the corner and handed the water skin to Su Wanyang. You take charge of all our supplies from now on. Su Wanyang looked at the water skin in her hands. The crooked stitches were still visible. She brushed her fingers lightly over it and whispered, If you go out searching for supplies, you have to tell me beforehand. Chin-su nodded. Agreed. Outside, night fell fully over Heishui village. From afar came the occasional cough of refugees and the footsteps of Zhou Kuei's men patrolling. Chin-su stood up and pulled his sleeves down. Su Wanyang watched him. You're heading out now? Yes. Chin-su gazed toward the dark village lanes, his gaze turning solemn. I haven't explored the entire village yet. If luck is on my side tonight, I might find more supplies to keep us alive. Su Wanyang fell silent for a moment. She picked up one of the hatchets and placed it beside her. Go on then. She glanced at the soundly sleeping Xiao Man. I will guard our home. Warmth spread through Chun-su's heart. That single word, home, echoed more beautifully than any other in this drafty, crumbling hut. He pushed open the door and stepped into the darkness. Chin-su walked out of the courtyard. The night wind swept over him, dulling the stench of blood and clearing his mind. Heishui village had suffered terribly at the hands of bandits during the day, and it felt even more desolate after dark. Chun-su followed the dirt road deeper into the village. Zhou Kuei and his men had searched the village earlier, gathering pots, sacks, and all the supplies the bandits had left out in the open. That had only been a surface search. Chin-su was different. He had the system. He arrived at the assembly hall where the bandit chieftain had stayed during the day. The room was pitch black, still thick with the smell of blood. He pulled a tinderbox from his chest and blew gently. A flame flickered to life. Old black blood stained the ground, sticky underfoot. Chun-su circled behind the tiger, skin armchair. He had checked in at this spot earlier and earned a fine iron dagger. If the front of the chair qualified for a check-in, there might be something hidden behind it. Chun-su crouched and tapped each brick along the base of the wall behind the chair. Thud, thud, thud. The third brick rang hollow. Chun-su's eye sharpened. He drew his fine iron dagger and pried along the crack. The blade slipped into the gap. He twisted it hard. The brick came loose. He pulled it out, revealing a dark hidden compartment set into the wall. He reached inside, his fingertips brushing a small hard wooden box. The moment he dragged the box out. New location detected. Hidden compartment. Assembly hall wall check-in. The corners of Chun-su's mouth tugged upward, just as he suspected. The system's check-in conditions sometimes relied on uncovering hidden spots. Check-in. Check. Unsuccessful at hidden compartment. Assembly hall wall reward. Zhuge repeating crossbow ×1 stored in system inventory. Chun-su's fingers tightened. A repeating crossbow. This was a devastating weapon for group combat. He had felled several bandits with his sleeve crossbow earlier, but those bolts were short and limited. A repeating crossbow was far more powerful, with greater range. Chun-su focused his mind and summoned the crossbow from inventory. It settled heavily in his hands. The crossbow was dark all over, cold and solid to the touch. 10 fine steel bolts sat loaded in the magazine, their slender sharp points glinting coldly in the firelight. The mechanism was exquisitely crafted, capable of firing successive shots with each pull of the trigger. Chun-su stroked the wooden stock. A priceless find. Paired with the system inventory's ability to restore items, this single weapon could match a squad of archers. He stored the crossbow away again. Afterward, he opened the small wooden box. Inside were several pieces of broken silver and a stack of yellowed paper. Chinsa stowed the silver away without much excitement. Silver was only valuable if you could find someone willing to trade grain for it in these troubled times. He picked up the papers and scanned them. Land deeds and slave contracts. Many names were smudged by sweat and dried blood, but numerous thumbprints could still be seen. Chinsa frowned. These bandits did not merely rob and kill, they trafficked people as well. He closed the wooden box and kept it along with the documents. They were useless now, but they might prove valuable later. He searched the rest of the assembly hall and received no further system prompts. A small courtyard adjoined the rear of the hall. An abandoned well stood in the yard. Chinsa walked over and leaned to peer inside. The well shaft was engulfed in darkness. The flame from his tinderbox could not reach the bottom, only illuminating the damp stone walls. Wind rose from the well mouth, carrying a damp, musty odor. New location detected. Edge of abandoned well. Assembly hall courtyard check-in? Check-in. Check. Unsuccessful at edge of abandoned well. Assembly hall courtyard reward. Find steel chainmail ×1 stored in system inventory. Chinsa's breath hitched. Armor. He summoned the armor at once. It was a close, fitting hauberk woven from tightly linked iron rings. Heavy in his grasp. Every edge was smoothly polished so it would not chafe the wearer. Chinsa hefted it. The weight was substantial. With this layer of protection, he would not be easily stabbed through in close combat from now on. Chinsa glanced around. There was no one nearby. He stripped off his outer robe, pulled the chainmail over his body, and pulled his tattered clothes back on. It fit perfectly. The cold iron rings pressed against his skin, throbbing against his wounds. Yet Chinsa felt far more secure. A little pain meant nothing, as long as he survived. He stood beside the well and pondered. The edge of the well counted as a location. What about the stone lip of the well? The bottom? At the abandoned well behind the ruined temple, he had managed 3 separate check-ins. Chinsa stepped onto the stone lip and waited 2 heartbeats. No notification. He crouched and rested his palm on the stone lip. Still nothing. He pulled his hand back. It seemed he could not exploit the system loophole with this well in Heishui village. Chinsa did not push his luck and headed toward the rear of the village. Further back stretched wasteland leading to a low earthen mound. The air grew fouler the closer he drew. It was not just the stench of blood. Rot. Chinsa slowed his pace. A large pit lay beneath the mound. It was piled high with bones. Some blackened, others still draped in hardened scraps of flesh. Tattered rags caught between the skeletons fluttered in the wind. Chinsa stood at the pit's edge, his expression darkening. These bandits had slain countless people here in Heishui village. The refugees only knew the bandits had plundered the village. But the true horror of Heishui village lay within this pit. New location detected. Mass grave. Heishui village check-in? Chinsa fell silent for a moment. Check-in. Check. Unsuccessful at mass grave. Heishui village reward. Golden sore healing salve ×10 vials stored in system inventory. 10 vials of healing salve. Chinsa blinked, then felt a surge of relief. This reward could not have come at a better time. The 2 packets of medicinal powder Zhou Kuei had given him were passable, but their effects were limited. His chest and leg wounds still throbbed constantly. Items from the system were always top quality. He took out 1 vial, pulled the stopper, and inhaled. A cool medicinal fragrance filled his nose, easing the burning ache in his chest at once. Excellent medicine. He stored it away and looked again at the bones filling the pit. At dawn tomorrow, he would ask Zhou Kuei to bring men to fill this pit. At the very least, the victims deserved a proper burial. Chinsa turned to leave. He had only taken a few steps when he halted abruptly. The dry grass behind the mound had been bending westward under the night wind this whole time. But just now, one patch had swayed the opposite way. Chinsa narrowed his eyes. In the next instant, a dark figure darted out from behind the mound and scurried low to the ground into a nearby crumbling grass hut. The movement was swift. Chinsa snuffed out his tinderbox, plunging everything back into darkness. He lightened his footsteps and crept along the shadow of the earthen wall toward the hut. Chinsa stopped outside the door and raised his left arm slightly. Beneath his torn sleeve, the mechanism of his steel sleeve crossbow rested cold and firm against his wrist. Someone was inside. The hut door stood half ajar. Chinsa pressed against the base of the wall, holding his breath to listen. Sounds of rummaging drifted out, along with muted cursing. Damn it all. Where did the second chieftain hide his silver? I've searched everywhere and haven't found a single copper coin. Keep your voice down. The refugees in the village aren't all asleep. If they hear us, we'll both die here. What have we got to fear? Just a bunch of starving skeletons. The second chieftain only lost because he was caught off guard by that kid with the hatchet. Once our brothers from the main stronghold arrive tomorrow, not one of these refugees will live. Chun-Su leaned against the doorframe, his fingers slowly wrapping around the hilt of his dagger. Main stronghold. This bandit camp in Heishui village was merely an outpost. There was a larger fortress somewhere. Chun-Su's gaze turned icy. Leave roots untorn, and weeds will grow again. He scanned his surroundings, picked up a stone, and tossed it into the open space some distance away. Thud! The stone hit the ground. Noise inside the hut ceased instantly. Who's there? A head poked out through the crack in the door, gripping a bloodstained machete. Chun-Su stood hidden in the blind spot beside the doorway, motionless. The man stared out for a long time and saw nothing. His courage returned. Probably just a wildcat. Keep searching. I'm going outside to relieve myself. The man pushed open the door and stepped out. He had barely walked 2 paces when Chun-Su surged from the darkness. One hand clamped tight over the man's mouth, while his dagger stabbed straight into the man's kidney. Squelch. Blade sank into flesh. The man's eyes bulged wide. Muffled sounds struggled to escape his throat as his body convulsed violently. Chun-Su tightened his grip, preventing him from crying out. He pulled the dagger free and slashed backward. Hot blood sprayed across the grass. Chun-Su lowered the body gently against the wall. Inside the hut, the other bandit continued rummaging through crates. Sixth brother? No answer came. Sixth brother, did you fall into a puddle? Taking forever to relieve yourself. Grumbling, the man gripped his blade and walked toward the door. The moment he stuck his head out, a cold dagger pressed against his neck. Don't move. Chun-Su spoke in a low voice. The man stiffened all over. His machete clattered to the ground. Spare my life. Spare my life. Chun-Su kicked the back of his knee. The man crashed to his knees. The dagger pressed a little deeper, beads of blood welling from the cut. I ask you answer. One useless word, and you join your chieftain. The man trembled so hard his teeth chattered. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. Where is your main stronghold? How many men do you have? Chun-Su demanded. It's 30 li east of here, on Blackwind Mountain. More than 200 brothers stationed there. Our leader is Vulture. He has dozens of horses and sturdy bows. 200 men, plus horses and archers. Chun-Su's heart sank. This force was far deadlier than the scattered bandits he had fought earlier that day. Chun-Su stared at him. The second chieftain is dead. When will the main stronghold find out? The man swallowed hard. When the second chieftain fell, several fast runners escaped. They must have raced back to send word. Blackwind Mountain is not far. A rider can cover the distance in half a day. At the latest, Vulture will lead his men here first thing tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. Chun-Su glanced up at the sky. It was already the middle of the night. Time was running out. Chun-Su pressed on. Are there any other hidden stashes in Heishui village? The man's eyes darted away. Chun-Su pushed the dagger down slightly. Think carefully before you speak. There are. The man yelped, then quickly lowered his voice. There's a cave in the back mountain. All the valuables looted by our leader are hidden there. Only the leader and a few trusted men know about it. Chun-Su said coldly, lead the way. He grabbed the man by the collar, the dagger prodding his lower back. The bandit dared not try anything treacherous and trudged forward. They circled the mound, crossed the dry grass, and reached a jumble of rock piles on the back mountain. Huge stones blocked the mountain face. One would never spot the cave without looking closely. The bandit shifted the rocks aside, revealing a dark entrance. Sir, everything is inside. He turned around, forcing a wretched smile. Let me go? I swear I will never return to the stronghold. I'll go back to my hometown and farm the land. I mean it. Chun-Su looked at his hands. Thick calluses covered them, crusted with dried blood. Do you think these hands can ever hold a hoe again? The man froze. In the next instant, the dagger pierced his heart. Men who robbed and murdered innocent people did not deserve mercy. Chun-Su kicked the corpse aside. He lit his tinderbox, bent down, and stepped into the cave. The cave was shallow and dry. As the flames stretched forward, Chun-Su halted. More than a dozen large wooden crates lay stacked inside. He stepped forward and pried open the first one. Silver ingots were neatly piled within. He opened the second crate. Strings of copper coins were tightly bound. Chun-Su only glanced briefly. Precious as money was, it was not his priority right now. He pried open the third crate. Cold glint met his eyes as the lid fell away. More than a dozen new broadswords rested inside, their blades coated in anti-rust oil. The fourth crate held several hardwood bows and 2 large bundles of arrows. Chun-Su caught his breath. Remarkable. These bandits had not only plundered and killed, they had stockpiled weapons as well. New location detected. Bandit Treasure Cave check-in? Check-in. Check. In successful at Bandit Treasure Cave reward. Premium tinderbox ×1 stored in system inventory. Chun-Su raised an eyebrow. A premium tinderbox? Hardly worthwhile. He stored the tinderbox away and turned his attention back to the crates. He set aside the silver and copper for now. Broadswords, hardwood bows, and arrows were what they needed most urgently. He tried to store the broadswords in his system inventory. The gray interface did not respond at all, just as he suspected. Ordinary items from the outside world could not be stored. Chen Su's expression darkened. There was no way he could move so many weapons alone. I need to bring others back. Chen Su wasted no time and turned to leave the cave. He followed the mountain path back to Heishui village. The village lay quiet. The refugees had endured a long day of travel and brutal fighting. Snoring echoed across the settlement. Chen Su headed straight for the courtyard where Zhou Kuei was staying. Two trusted men stood guard at the gate. They were not keeping proper watch, leaning against the wall half asleep. One nodded off repeatedly, the other drooling. Chen Su walked over and kicked one man's calf. "Who's there?" The man jolted awake and scrambled for his blade. When he saw Chen Su, he relaxed and wiped his chin. "Brother Chen, what are you doing wandering around in the middle of the night? You nearly gave me a fright. Wake Zhou Kuei at once. Something terrible is coming." The man saw the gravity on Chen Su's face and dared not delay. He hurried into the house. Moments later, Zhou Kuei emerged wearing his worn leather jerkin and gripping a heavy cleaver. His eyes were bloodshot, freshly roused, and irritation lingered on his face. "Brother Chun, it's the middle of the night. Has the sky fallen?" Zhou Kuei yawned. "The sky hasn't fallen, but a force of killers is on its way." Zhou Kuei's yin died unfinished. Chen Su spoke each word clearly. "I explored the back mountain just now and killed 2 bandits hiding out. They belong to a larger stronghold 30 li east on Black Wind Mountain. Their leader is Vulture, with more than 200 men, dozens of horses, and sturdy archery bows. They will attack no later than tomorrow morning." All trace of drowsiness vanished from Zhou Kuei's face. The muscles on his jaw twitched violently. "What? 200 men? And horses?" The 2 guards standing beside him woke fully, their faces draining of color. Chen Su shot him a sharp look. "Keep your voice down, or you will rouse the entire village." Zhou Kuei clamped his mouth shut, but cold sweat broke out across his forehead. He paced the courtyard anxiously and slapped his thigh hard. "Damn it! No more sleep for anyone. Hurry, wake all our men. Gather supplies. We need to flee at once." With that, he lifted his blade and made to rush outside. Chen Su grabbed Zhou Kuei's arm with crushing strength, halting the tall man in his tracks. "Flee? Where will you go? Black Wind Mountain is only 30 li away. Our group is full of the elderly, women, children, and wounded with carts. How far can we travel overnight? 10 li at most. They ride horses. At dawn they will follow our tracks and catch us in less than half an hour. Once they run us down on open ground, what will you use to stop their charges?" Zhou Kuei grew frantic and pulled his arm free. "Then what do you suggest? Stay here and wait to die? We only have 30 or so capable fighters. 200 men will overwhelm us easily." Chen Su's gaze was sharp as he fixed Zhou Kuei in place. "Fleeing means certain death. If we stand and fight here, we might survive." Night wind swept through the courtyard. Distant coughing from refugees drifted over. These people had survived the battle only hours earlier and had barely managed to fall asleep. Elders, children, women, wounded. A hasty overnight retreat would leave most of them unable to keep up. Zhou Kuei's grip on his blade tightened until his knuckles whitened. "How do we fight?" Chen Su pointed toward the village entrance. "We know the terrain of Heishui village better than they do. The gateway is narrow, flanked by broken walls and abandoned huts. Horses cannot build up speed charging through. If we bottle them up at the entrance, their cavalry loses most of its advantage." A flicker of thought crossed Zhou Kuei's face. Chen Su said again, "I found a cave at the back mountain just now. Inside are more than a dozen broadswords hidden by those bandits, several hardwood bows, and 2 large bundles of arrows. Take a few trusted men with me to bring them back right now. Distribute the swords to the able-bodied men, and station the archers on the rooftops. If they dare charge into the village, we'll show them that Heishui village is not a place they can come and go as they please." When Zhou Kuei heard about the weapons, his eyes lit up, only to dim quickly afterward. "Weapons are good news, but we are vastly outnumbered. Brother Chen, it's not that I, Zhou Kuei, am cowardly. This battle will be extremely tough. Tough as it is, we have to fight." Chen Su pulled a gunpowder pouch from his breast and waved it in front of Zhou Kuei. A faint smell of sulfur drifted over. "Besides, I still have this. If they cluster together, I'll send them straight to their end." Zhou Kuei stared at the pouch, gritted his teeth hard, and swore. "We're doing it. Fight to the last breath. Fortune favors the bold." He knew Chen Su was right. Running meant certain death. If they stayed and fought using the terrain and weapons, they still stood a slim chance. He turned and barked orders at his 2 night watch lieutenants. Go wake Li Ergu and the others. Make sure you don't alarm the displaced villagers camped on the outskirts. Grab your weapons and follow Brother Chun to haul supplies from the back mountain. The 2 men did not dare delay and rushed off at once. About the time it takes to burn 1 incense stick. Chun Su led Zhou Kuei and more than a dozen of his most reliable men through the darkness to the cave in the back mountain. Flames flared inside the cave. Crates of broadswords, hardwood bows, and arrows left everyone stunned. Li Ergu picked up a broadsword and ran his thumb along the edge, nearly cutting his skin. Good heavens, this blade weighs a ton. Another man lifted a bundle of arrows, his eyes wide. These bandits have stashed quite an arsenal here. Zhou Kuei kicked the side of a wooden crate. Quit chattering and start moving. Everything must be set up before dawn. The men got to work immediately. Some carried sword crates, others slung bows over their shoulders, and the rest hauled arrows. The group stumbled through the uneven ground, transporting the arms back to the village. By the time they reached the village entrance, a pale gray light had appeared on the horizon. Shinsu broke off a branch and traced the layout of the village gate, main path, crumbling walls, and flanking houses on the dirt ground. Zhou Kuei, pick our 20 strongest men. Arm them with the new broadswords and have them hide in the dilapidated houses lining both sides of the main road. Remember, no one is to show themselves when the bandits first rush in. Wait until their horses slow down, or once they dismount to search the village, then charge out. Shinsu jabbed the branch hard against the ground. Don't aim for the men first. Strike at the horse legs. Zhou Kuei nodded and turned to select his fighters. Shinsu then looked toward Li Ergu. Take a few men who know how to shoot, grab the hardwood bows, and position yourselves on the rooftops and the old locust tree. Don't dream of hitting targets 100 paces away. None of you have that skill. Li Ergu's face flushed. Shinsu did not continue to tease him and carried on. Focus on the riders, the best, dressed men, and anyone shouting orders the loudest. If you can't hit the head, aim for the chest. If you miss the chest, loose arrows straight into their crowd. So long as you throw them into chaos, that will be enough. Li Ergu nodded firmly. Understood. Afterward, Shinsu and several men strung 3 hemp ropes across the dirt road leading to the village gate. The ropes lay flush against the ground, concealed beneath loose soil and withered grass. They were all but invisible to anyone who was not looking closely. He also dug several shallow pits behind the collapsed walls on either side. Shinsu buried the gunpowder pouches inside, running slow, burning fuses all the way to a broken wall not far away. Zhou Kuei stared at the thin fuse and lowered his voice. Brother Chun, can this thing really wipe them out? Shinsu brushed dirt off his hands. I can't promise it will kill them all outright, but it will make sure they never forget Heishui village for the rest of their days. Everyone labored until the sky paled. The village remained deathly quiet. Shinsu returned to his small courtyard. Su Wanyang sat beside the heated brick bed, tightly gripping the hatchet Shinsu had given her, her gaze fixed constantly on the courtyard gate. Xiaoman curled up in her arms, fast asleep. Her small face rested against the quilt, only half visible. She jumped to her feet the moment she heard the door push open. What's happening? I've heard constant noise outside. Captain Zhou and the others seem to have hauled a great many things. Shinsu walked over to the water vat, scooped up a ladle of cold water, and splashed it over his face. The cold water washed away some of the exhaustion from a sleepless night. He set down the ladle and said, Bandits from Black Wind Mountain are coming. Su Wanyang's face turned pale. How many are there? More than 200. Shinsu did not hide the truth from her. They have horses and bows as well. The hatchet nearly slipped from Su Wanyang's grasp. Over 200. Then what will we do? Don't be afraid. Shinsu stepped in front of her and placed both hands on her shoulders. Her shoulders were thin. He could feel her bones even through her rough cloth garment. He met her eyes. I've set traps at the village entrance. This battle will be hard fought, but we are not without hope. Su Wanyang looked at him, tears slowly welling up in her eyes. Shinsu softened his tone. Stay inside this house. Bolt the doors and windows tight. No matter what noises you hear outside, do not step foot out the door. If any bandit breaks into the courtyard, take this hatchet and strike straight for their neck. Su Wanyang glanced down at the heavy hatchet in her hands. She nodded firmly, then grabbed hold of Chun Su's sleeve. You must come back alive. You promised Xiaoman you would let her eat meat every day from now on. Chun Su glanced at the sleeping little girl. He reached out and gently stroked Su Wanyang's hair. Rest assured, my life is tough. Yama won't claim me anytime soon. Su Wanyang did not pull away. She only tightened her grip on his sleeve. Moments later, She slowly let go. Go. We will wait for you to return. Chunsa nodded and strode out of the courtyard. Early morning mist shrouded Heishui village. The whole settlement hung in an eerie silence. Not even a bird chirped. Chunsu went alone to the broken wall by the village gate. He wore a steel crossbow gauntlet strapped to his left arm, an iron short sword tucked at his waist, and held the brand new hatchet in his hand. The great weapon, the Zhuge repeating crossbow, rested inside his system inventory. Leaning against the wall, Chunsu closed his eyes and slowly regulated his breathing. Wind swept down the barren road, carrying the scent of dust. A low rumble rolled over the distance, and the ground began to tremble faintly. Chunsu snapped his eyes open. They had arrived. Morning mist swirled and thinned beneath the pounding hooves. A dark line appeared along the horizon. The line rapidly thickened, turning into a surging black tide. Dozens of mounted bandits led the advance, followed by hundreds more foot raiders. They wore mismatched leather armor and rough tunics, wielding sabers and spears. At their head, riding a towering black warhorse, sat a heavily bearded man with a vicious stare, the bandit chief, Mountain Eagle. Several lieutenants beside him galloped forward, laughing loudly. Chief, Heishui village lies ahead. The second squad are a bunch of useless fools. They couldn't even hold a shabby village and got wiped out. What a disgrace to Black Wind Mountain. Once we get inside, slay all the men and seize the women to take back to our camp. Mountain Eagle said nothing, only raised a hand to signal the advance. He thought nothing of this tiny village. One of the men who fled yesterday had told him their leader was merely a boy with a hatchet. What threat could he pose? They had only won before through surprise and superior numbers. Today, with over 200 men under his command, Mountain Eagle could trample this hamlet flat 10 times over. Charge. Leave no survivors. A lieutenant beside Mountain Eagle roared at the top of his lungs. Kill. All the bandits shouted in unison, their cry shaking the air. Waving their sabers, they urged their horses to full speed, rushing like a black flood toward the narrow village gate of Heishui village. Up in the old locust tree at the gate, Li Ergu clutched his hardwood bough, his palms slick with sweat. Staring at the wave of mounted bandits bearing down, his knees shook uncontrollably. Dogmaster, what do we do? There are far too many of them. Another archer beside him spoke in a trembling voice. Li Ergu swallowed hard and recalled Chunsu's orders from before dawn. Quit your shouting. Brother Chen said we wait for his signal. No one looses an arrow until he gives the word. Inside the dilapidated houses flanking the gate, Zhou Kuei and more than 20 able-bodied men gripped their new broadswords tightly, each holding their breath from tension. The thunder of hooves beat as if upon their hearts. Chief, do we really stand a chance? A young man whispered. Zhou Kuei slapped the back of his head. Shut your mouth. If Brother Chen says we can win, then we can win. He sounded fierce, yet doubt gnawed at him. These were mounted bandits. But remembering Chunsu's calm gaze, he forced his panic back down. Chunsu stood motionless behind the broken wall, quietly watching the approaching raiders. 100 paces, 80 paces, 50 paces. The leading dozen riders already wore savage grins. They could even see the tangled, withered grass covering the ground before the gate. Right then, pull. 2 men stationed beside the gate gritted their teeth and pulled the 3 hemp trip ropes upward with all their strength. The tripwires hidden beneath soil and grass snapped taut in an instant. The front warhorse's front legs caught on the first rope. Carried forward by unstoppable momentum, the heavy steed let out a shrill whinny and crashed forward head over heels. The rider atop was thrown flying before he could scream, crashing heavily into the ground. Boom. Crash. 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 A chain reaction erupted instantly. The horses following behind could not halt in time and slammed into the fallen steeds ahead. Horses collided with horses, riders crashed into one another. Screams of terrified horses, the crack of breaking bones, and the cries of injured bandits merged into a dreadful din. More than 20 horses at the front toppled one after another like dominoes, rolling and crashing together. Blood and dust billowed into the air. The narrow village gate was immediately blocked by fallen horses and wounded riders, forming a chaotic mound of flesh. The bandits further back froze in terror and hauled desperately on their reins. Ambush! Stop! Everyone stop! What's happening up front? The vanguard of riders descended into complete chaos. Mountain Eagle watched everything from the rear of the formation, his face turning livid. He never imagined these lowly displaced villagers would dare set a trap. Hold formation. Hold your ground. Mountain Eagle drew his 9-ring broadsword and roared. Dismount. Clear the path. The remaining riders blocking the gate jumped down from their horses. Cursing loudly, They dragged injured horses and fallen comrades aside. Men and horses crowded together in a tangled mess. Behind the broken wall, Chun Tsu's expression remained cold. He glanced upward toward Li Ergu in the locust tree and raised a hand, gesturing to light the fuse. Ergu, light the arrow. Aim for the fuse. Li Ergu had been stunned by the carnage unfolding before him. Chun Tsu's shout jolted him awake. He pulled out a tinderbox wrapped in oilcloth, blew the flame alight, and ignited an arrow bound with cloth. Dogmaster, where to shoot? Someone asked. Brother Chin said aim for that raised patch of earth. Li Ergu drew the bow, took a deep breath, and loosed the flaming arrow toward the loose mound of soil beside the blocked gate. Whoosh! The fire arrow arced crookedly through the air. His aim was terrible. Still, the distance was short. The arrow thudded into the ground 3 paces in front of the soil mound, its flames still burning bright. Damn it! I missed. Li Ergu smacked his thigh in frustration. At the gate, a bandit lieutenant dragging a horse corpse spotted the flaming arrow and let out a loud laugh. Haha, these useless peasants can't even shoot straight. They think they can fight us. His laughter died in his throat the next instant. The flame on the arrow drifted over and touched the nearly invisible thin fuse leading out from the soil mound. Hiss! The fuse caught fire at once. Sparks raced along it and vanished into the mound. The lieutenant's grin had not yet faded. The next second, boom! A deafening explosion burst from beneath the soil. The full pouch of gunpowder Chun Tsu had buried unleashed its terrifying power. A violent shockwave hurled dirt, stone shards, and searing air outward, blooming like a black flower of death amid the tightly packed crowd. More than a dozen bandits clustered together had no time to react and were flung high into the air by the blast. Their bodies were torn apart. Limbs, blood, and organs sprayed in every direction. A crater half the height of a man opened up at the center of the explosion. Raiders nearby were thrown staggering by the blast, their ears ringing unbearably. One lieutenant standing close by lost half his body. He lay on the ground, staring in disbelief at his mangled torso, mouth agape yet unable to utter a sound. A heavy silence fell over the village gate. Every soul present was stunned senseless by the thunderous detonation. Inside the house, Su Wanyang pressed her hands tightly over Xiaoman's ears and held the child's head against her chest. Her face was ashen, her heart hammering wildly. The blast shook loose dust that drifted down from the roof beams. She could not tell what had happened outside, but she knew Chun Tsu was right there. Behind the broken wall, Chun Tsu was covered head to toe in dirt thrown by the shockwave. He spat sand from his mouth, his eyes blazing. It worked. This blast would deal these raiders a crippling blow. At the rear of the bandit formation, Mountain Eagle's warhorse reared up with a shrill neigh. He wrenched the reins tight, staring at the smoking crater and the broken bodies surrounding it. His facial muscles twitched violently. Trip ropes. Gunpowder. How could simple displaced villagers possess such tactics? Mountain Eagle let out a feral roar, his eyes blazing red with rage. Kill them all. Climb in from both sides. I want every last one of them dead.